Okay, I want to get started here and welcome everybody. We got some special people here tonight, a lot of special people. So let's go ahead and stand, and Pete's going to do the prayer, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag. But I still would like to let everybody know, Mr. Pack, we all feel for him today. He's not here tonight. He's, how you have it, he's helping his dad go to rest tonight in the family. So they're up in Baltimore, and we want to say a little prayer for him. And maybe I did it last meeting, a moment of silence for his family. And I'd like to do that right now, please. Thank you. Mr. Risher.
Will you join me in prayer? O God, our guardian and protector, we ask for your continued presence and protecting hand in our community as our hearts ache for communities much like ours that have been racked by gun violence, communities across America, in places like Buffalo, Aurora, Charleston, Dayton, Lynchburg, Newton, Orlando, Parkland, Pittsburgh, San Bernardino, Uvalde, and hundreds of others. Strengthen those who provide the mental health services and all who work in law enforcement as your hands in our community. Give us the wisdom to take measures that will stop this senseless loss of life and help us to govern with justice in your most holy name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you, Vice President Lasher. I appreciate that. Okay, let's start with the agenda tonight. We have the May 24th before us. Is there any additions, deletions, or corrections, Council?
To the agenda?
Yep.
No.
Yep. Okay, hearing none, the chair moves that the minutes be accepted as unanimous consent. Agenda. Sorry. Okay, let's go to the minutes of May 3rd, or before us. Do we have any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, the chair moves that the minutes be accepted as unanimous consent. Okay, disbursements of May 24th are in front of us. There's no additions, deletions, or corrections to the disbursements. Hearing none, I move that the disbursements be accepted as unanimous consent. Okay, now one of the special people here tonight, okay, is Miss Dr. Kelly Griffith. So we want her to bring her on up, please. It's going to be a certificate of recognition of her hard work throughout the years of 40 years. It's been 40 probably.
39.
39. Let's call it 40. Let's call it 40.
I took 1 year off.
Did you? Okay. All right. Well, that's good. That's great. So, okay. Madam Secretary, could you go ahead and read the recognition into the record, please? I'd appreciate it.
Certificate of recognition to Kelly Griffith in recognition of distinguished service to the citizens of Talbot County as Superintendent of Schools, July 1st, 2014 to June 30th, 2022. Interim Superintendent of Schools, July 1st, 2013 to June 30th, 2014. Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services, 2011 to 2013. Director of Student Programs and School Improvement, 2010. Principal, Easton High School, 2006 to 2010. Principal, Easton Elementary School, 2000 to 2006. Principal, Chapel District Elementary School, 1996 to 2000. Principal, Easton Middle School, 1992 to 1996. Assistant Principal, Easton Middle School, 1990 to 1992. And Language Arts Teacher, Easton Middle School, 1988 to 1990. In appreciation of your devotion and commitment to the children of Talbot County, their parents, and the community at large, for more than 34 years as a teacher, principal, administrator, and superintendent for Talbot County Public Schools. We hereby bestow upon you, as a token of the esteem and gratitude of our community, this certificate of recognition.
Thank you very much. Makes me feel very old. Hearing all that.
Right.
But as you all know, this county and the children and staff in this community have been my true heart and soul in my work, and just really appreciate all of your support throughout those years. Very much so. Thank you.
That's great. Madam Secretary, appreciate that. Good job. Is there a motion and a second to accept this certificate?
Second.
We got a motion second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Now we can talk.
Okay.
Now we can talk. Now we can talk. Go ahead, Ms. Price.
It has really been an honor to work with you. I mean, this school budget and the push and pull is always difficult, but we recognize how important this funding is, and we always get to a place that everybody can live with and do the best for our kids. You were principal of the school when my two boys were there, which is, I think, the first time that I really got to know you while you were principal, and also, being on the council and working on the budgets and everything. But it was really great having you there, and we appreciate everything that you've done. We're gonna miss you. Of course, a few of us are going too, so I guess it's a good year to go out of office, right? But thank you for all of your hard work, and your heart really does show in the way you care. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Price. Mr. DeVillio?
So I guess I'm the only one who has had the pleasure of being in your office when you were the principal.
I don't know. There might be some people behind me.
No, but it's been a unique experience growing up, watching you be a principal in the different schools and seeing your transition to being superintendent and then working with you. And I've really enjoyed it. It's, a lot of people say, well, I just moved here. I can be part of the community. Yes, you absolutely can. But there's a lot of history that
right.
you have to learn and catch up on quickly. And so I definitely benefited from knowing you and being able to work with you as a council person and having trust that was already there. I've seen what you've implemented in the schools firsthand with my children who are now in the schools. And thinking about the generations that you've seen go through there, I have a lot of pride for public schools. I know that you do too, and it does show that you are out there cheering them on, rallying, and you're in the schools. Every day I'm seeing you be with students. Of course, knowing you send me pictures every now and then when you stop by and see my kids in school doing something, hopefully that they're supposed to be doing. But you are a champion for our schools, and it's been a challenge. It's never been easy. You've never been given an open checkbook, and there's always things that you want to try, and there's always things that fail. And this community has challenged you more often than support. And I'm regretful for that, because I've seen friends and families take their kids out of public schools thinking that they're going to get something better when I know they're not. Because I know the teachers, I know what services are available, right. And I know how well we all work together, even outside of the school, to make sure that the family gets the benefit that they need, which in turn makes this such a wonderful place to live. The public school education is the largest educator in Talbot County, and it's a big driving force, whether it puts kids into chef cook and going to Johnson & Wales, whether it's sports, putting them into college sports, or putting them into Chesapeake College through dual enrollment. Right. We have the great connections and the ability to raise our own and bring them back, and you've done that. And to you, we owe you a huge debt of gratitude, and I thank you for the challenge that you've put up with and gone through. You've done it successfully. Thank you.
You so much. That means a lot.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeVillio.
Well,
Mr. Lesher?
I agree with all that, and Dr. Griffith, you have my gratitude for the transformation that you have brought to education in Talbot County. Your commitment that every child will learn and grow and succeed is is measurable in many ways, in the reduced dropout rate, in the increased graduation rate, in the successes that we see in program after program through these schools, and how you have led your team to these successes. You leave a legacy behind you in Talbot County. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lesher. I would agree with my colleagues in just a cute little story. So yep. So yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. So,
Okay.
so I have two sons too that went there, and they were under your umbrella, and got a little call years ago, and you called me, and when you called, I said, uh-oh. Here we go. We got good stuff coming down. And you said to me, my son Clark plays hockey, and he said, do you think he can play a full game without getting thrown out? It was so awesome. It was so awesome. You might not remember that incident, but
Thrown out.
I mean, you know, it just in his heart, he got to get thrown out. So, but you know, like my colleague said, you're such a special person, and the way you handled yourself it's been enjoyable working with you for the last 8 years up here. It really has, and I've really felt comfortable reaching out to you, good and bad. You know, hey, I'm irritated, and you're irritated, and you can have that sort of adult conversation, and you know, you're very, very professional when it comes to that, and I really appreciate that. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to hate to see you leave, but you've made many friends over 40 years, and a lot of people respect you, and I really appreciate all your professionalism and everything you've done for Talbot County and the schools, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, and I got something. We have something for you. We're gonna come down and present it to you. So let's all go down here.
Very nice.
Okay, I gotta take him with the big camera too, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. There we go. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very, very much. Today's my husband's 60th birthday. So Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. What a special moment for everybody in the county. That's for sure. Okay. Okay. Next thing on the agenda is a proclamation of National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Madam Secretary, could you go ahead and read the proclamation into the record, please?
Proclamation, National Gun Violence Awareness Day, June 3rd, 2022. Whereas every day more than 110 Americans are killed by gun violence, in addition to the more than 200 individuals who are shot and wounded. And whereas Americans are 26 times more likely to die by gun homicide than individuals in other high-income countries, with an average of nearly 16,000 homicides occurring in the United States each year. And whereas public safety is local government's highest responsibility, and jurisdictions across the nation, including Talbot County, are working to end the senseless gun violence with evidence-based solutions. And whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from children and individuals with dangerous histories. And whereas prevention of gun violence is more important than ever due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which after more than 2 years of increased gun sales has exacerbated gun violence, caused an increase in calls to suicide and domestic violence hotlines, and has resulted in an increase in community gun violence. And whereas in January 2013, Hadea Pendleton was tragically shot and killed at age 15. And on June 3rd, 2022, to recognize what would have been her 25th birthday on June 2nd, individuals across the United States will recognize National Gun Violence Awareness Day and wear orange to honor her and other victims of gun violence and their loved ones. And whereas the idea of recognizing this day was inspired by a group of Hadea's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange, the color which symbolizes the value of human life, and hunters wear to announce themselves to other hunters. And now therefore we, the County Council of Talbot County, hereby declare the first Friday in June 3rd, 2022, to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in Talbot County, and encourage citizens to wear orange to raise awareness about gun violence, to honor the lives of its victims and survivors, to renew our commitment to reduce gun violence by pledging to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands, and to encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our residents safe. Given under our hands in the Great Seal of Talbot County this 24th day of May in the year of our Lord, 2022.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Is there a motion and second to approve?
So move.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and second to approve this proclamation. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Okay. Is Miss Mary here? Would you come on up, please? You can come. Yeah, that'd be good, both of you, yeah.
Well, I want to thank the County Council very much for their willingness to give us this proclamation for Talbot County. It's important. I got in the car today to come here, turned on the radio, and heard the terrible news about another school shooting in Texas. So the fact that my own county is willing to speak up and say we need to have awareness of gun violence is very moving for me and for the rest of the people, the volunteers in my organization, Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. So we wish to thank you, the council, very much for raising awareness to this awful problem in our country.
Thank you.
What was the name of the organization?
Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America.
Okay.
It's part of Every Town, is the umbrella organization. And actually, here in this area, we are a fairly new branch of this organization. We started about 3 years ago, and we've been growing, and we are focusing a lot on our Be Smart program, which I think I told you a little bit about, Mr. DeVillio, in that it is about gun safety. It's about securing guns from children so that they don't get their hands on it and have a terrible accident in the home.
Right.
So teaching parents to safely secure their guns and their ammunition.
That's great.
Yeah, so the first time you had asked about this, I had told you that I would be willing to support this if we could bring in everyone involved in gun safety, which goes all the way to Albright's Gun Shop and Shore Sportsman selling gun safes and gun locks, Talbot Rod and Gun Club, which has at least 10 range safety officers who are certified to teach gun safety, as well as 4-H programs and archery, that goes through that as well as teaching gun safety, as well as hunter safety. Right. Those have been around much longer. And you know, when I look at this and I see that after 2 years of increased gun sales has exacerbated gun violence, I totally disagree with that. That the increased sales is what's changed it. I believe it's a mental health crisis that we have. But in my opinion, I think that Talbot County does a fantastic job teaching kids how to be safe, how to hunt safely. It's a major part of our community here, and I'm very thankful for those individuals who put in the time to show children what a gun is, the dangers of using a gun, and how to use it properly as a tool as it was created for. They've always been on TV since, and my children were shooting each other as little cowboys and Indians before they even saw it on TV, the same way that I did it, and I'm sure generations before me with their fingers. And while I definitely know that obviously with today, I would never vote on one thing based off of just one occurrence. And today is a very unusual situation in my mind. Thankfully, we're not seeing gun violence like that repeated every single day, monthly. But I appreciate anyone who steps up and wants to make the community safer. And I would love to see you participate and connect with any of those organizations. And if you have a hard time with it, I'll be more than happy to give you those names and individuals to work with, because I think that together we can definitely make a difference.
Well, this organization definitely has a mission to partner with gun owners, with organizations as you just described. In fact, we have already partnered with some other organizations in Talbot County, such as the Chess MRC, BAM, and the Interfaith Shelter. We would love to get a partnership with the organizations that you are referring to. That would be great, because as you said, you know, we have to all work together. This is a public health crisis, and we need to work together to keep people safe. So I'll be in touch to get the contact information from you, how to get in touch with those organizations. I also wanted to bring up at an event that we were at recently, Sheriff Gamble gave us, our group, he gave us a whole box of gun locks so that we could distribute them. And so we are planning to do that at the Waterfowl Festival. We're going to have a table there, and we will be, you know, passing those out to whoever needs or wants them.
Excellent.
That's great. That's great. Mr. Risher, you good?
I started with my the statement on this with my opening prayer here. It's just tragic that we find ourselves on this particular day in this particular situation, and I thank you for what your work in raising the awareness.
You're welcome.
Ms. Ray.
I agree with Mr. DeVillio in that partnering with these organizations who work so hard to, you know, to be safe, you know, to teach the right way to do things, and hopefully working with you, who's out there promoting this message to the public, they will understand that, and that everybody, you know, working together is always the best way to keep people safe. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate it takes people like you and volunteers out in our community who are willing to spread that message. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And like my colleague said, thanks so much for trying to spread the safety. I've got 2 sons of my own and went through the safety courses throughout most of my life with them and myself, and it's very, very important that people understand and respect that gun. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. And it really does, like Mr. DeVillio said, it's a mental health issue in a sense. We all know that, and all we can hope and pray is that can be helped, because and try to keep that out of somebody's hands that it doesn't belong in. Right. So that's what we need to try to fight for. So I appreciate the help.
And that's what our mission is.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Yep. So, okay, Mr. Rush, you want to hand that out?
Thank you so much.
Okay, let's move on to an update for the Talbot County Department of Social Services and Low Income Household Water Assistant Program in Talbot County for Child Advocacy Center. Linda, you want to come on up? You and Miss Blue?
Mr. Callahan, I
Yeah.
believe Mid-Shore Behavioral Health is first.
Oh, they are?
Yes.
I think they are. Oh, I apologize. Sorry. Yep.
We'll go either way.
Okay, okay, no problem. Sorry about that, Linda, I appreciate it. Okay. Yes. All right, guys, come on up. An update for the Mid-Shore Behavioral Health.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you for having us.
Mhm.
My name is Katie Dilley. I'm the Executive Director at Mid-Shore Behavioral Health. And this evening, I have the pleasure of introducing Shannon Joyce to you all. Shannon is a behavioral health coordinator representing our aging and older adult population. And she's also one of the, 5 pre-admission screening and resident review specialists for the state of Maryland for the Eastern Shore region. And she also represents Talbot County. That's her county of focus. So I will be doing some highlights and overview for the regional updates, and then Shannon's going to give you all some Talbot-specific updates this evening. And we certainly appreciate the opportunity to present in front of you during the month of May. May is also Mental Health Awareness Month, has been celebrated since 1949. So this year's theme for Mental Health Awareness Month is Together for Mental Health. And of course, it's very serendipitous that we're here this evening on this day, gathered by several partners here in the community and raising awareness of all the incidents that are happening. And certainly, to your point earlier, mental health is a priority in addressing how we get ahead of gun violence. So certainly something that we're tuned into. This is also Mid-Shore Behavioral Health's 30th anniversary year. So we were incorporated as a nonprofit in 1992. So we're excited to be celebrating our 30th anniversary. And we always like to start presentation just with an overview of our mission and vision. So the mission of Mid-Shore Behavioral Health is to continually improve the provision of behavioral health services for the residents of Caroline, Dorchester, Kent, Queen Anne's, and Talbot counties through effective coordination of care in collaboration with consumers, their natural support systems, providers, and our community at large. And our vision at Mid-Shore Behavioral Health is a rural behavioral health care delivery system that is both clinically and culturally competent, and will ensure access, have a community focus, be cost effective, and be integrated to serve our community as a whole. So one of the things we're hoping to do this evening as well, and it's included in your packet that we've offered ahead of time, is just to get your endorsement and support for continuing to serve in fiscal year 23 as your core service agency for Talbot County. So hopefully you all will support that this evening in addition to receiving our highlights. So we thank you for that. So a couple large projects that we've worked on, believe it or not, since COVID-19, our work has become, I think we've tripled in the amount of responsibilities that we've had, and obviously the need is certainly there as mental health and substance use needs and services are on the rise. So our work has been, really to try to get ahead of that and find ample resources to bring into the community. So we've been working very diligently with our state and federal partners to do that and seek new funding for the community. So hopefully if you have any questions about some of our new funding streams, we're happy to offer some clarity on that this evening too. Okay. So one thing that we've been working on more intentionally is the last couple of years we've worked to do our community behavioral health plan, not just as an independent core service agency, but involving our 5 health departments here in the Mid-Shore region. So we work with each of the local addictions authorities to develop the regional plan for our community behavioral health services. Of course, the long-term plan with that sort of intentional planning is to continue to work on an integrated level together organizationally, and see if there's, more formalized structure to what that will look like in the future. But for the last 2 or 3 years, we've been doing that in a collaborative known as the Midshore Planning Collaborative. So it's something that our health departments are in support of, our health officers, as well as the board at Midshore Behavioral Health. So that's been a great opportunity to be more intentional with how we're working together.
That's good.
One of the biggest things that the state is focusing on, the Behavioral Health Administration and the Department of Health, is how we enhance our crisis response system. And at Midshore Behavioral Health, we have the pleasure of overseeing the crisis response system, not just for the 5 counties of the Midshore region, but for all 9 counties on the Eastern Shore. And that really started with the closure of Upper Shore back in 2010, with some funds that came out of that community response initiative with the dollars from the closure of that facility. And since then, we've been able to really grow a very robust mobile crisis response system and crisis response system here on the shore. And we're continuing to seek additional funding every year to grow that system. So our focus recently really has been on the child and adolescent population. So in this coming fiscal year, we will be launching an expanded crisis response system to bring more mobile crisis teams to the region to be meeting with children and adolescents and our transitional age youth. They'll be partnering with Department of Social Services, our school systems, to do a more intentional response system for our young adults and our adolescents and children, which is a population that with COVID, we have seen the uprising with just the needs in the schools, the utilization of crisis response, and unfortunately some incidents of suicide and additional mental health needs in that population. We're also bringing on, we're piloting, we're the second region in the state to be piloting what's called a care traffic control system. And that's an enhanced model that involves new software to layer on top of the existing software that our crisis response teams are using to be able to fast track individuals that are met with crisis response into treatment, whether it be locating a bed in the state or a provider that has availability real time to meet their needs. So that's something in the next year we'll be bringing on board and having all of our providers in the region sign on as collaborators on that system. So it'll be really interesting to see the outcome of that, especially in parallel with 988, which is the National Suicide Line, is going live this summer in July. So those 2 projects will be happening at the same time. So when we come back next year, it'll be interesting to report out what we're seeing and how that system is really meeting the needs of the community a lot more swiftly. So we're hoping that there's some good outcomes there. But it's exciting that this region's been selected as sort of a second pilot for the state. So we're excited about that. We continue to bring in funding for our population facing opioid dependency and treatment needs. So we've been able to maintain 8 crisis beds at the A.F. Whitsett Center in Kent County. We've expanded our Safe Station development project to include a new site this last year in Denton, Maryland. And we're hoping to expand safe stations in the coming year in the region through funding through the Opioid Operational Command Center. We have been able to fund 2 adolescent clubhouse initiatives, working with our youth that are at risk for substance use, in particular opioid use. So we have worked with Maneri's Dream Alliance to bring up those 2 of those clubhouse models here in the region. And it's been an extremely successful program that's continuing to grow into the lower shore in this coming fiscal year. So we're very excited that we were able to start that up right here in Talbot County. We have initiated in the last couple years a special partnership that's drawn a lot of state attention around incidents of suicide on the Bay Bridge. So we have what's now called the Bay Bridge Partnership, which is not just Eastern Shore partners, but also Anne Arundel and Western Shore partners, as well as on the state level and the Maryland Department of Transportation and their police response, to work on addressing how we manage and get ahead of folks in crisis that do end up on large infrastructures like the Bay Bridge and other crisis hotspots in the state, and doing a more cross-communication and collaboration on how we respond and meet the needs, not just of the individual in crisis, but the families and support persons that are impacted when incidents do occur. I don't know if you all remember a couple summers ago, there were some very visible incidents that took a long time to debrief on the bridge and grew a lot of attention on social media and the news. And out of that, we really realized that we have a responsibility as the core service agency to be working with the partners that respond to those individuals and seeing how we can do a better job of meeting those needs in the moment of crisis, but also addressing how we can get ahead of suicide prevention, working upstream to address trauma, and our community awareness around suicide prevention. This year we've brought into the region a farming wellness initiative through a small grant that we went after right when COVID hit, and it's taken a long time to get off the ground. But this last year we brought 2 programs into the region that were targeting our farming population, and that's a group that really is a lot of times struggling in silence. So we're trying to look at new innovative ways to do community education and partnering activities that really address stigma around getting help in that community. And so I think we've done some successful outreach and made a lot of contacts this year with families and farmers. So we're hoping to continue to seek out grant dollars to support those initiatives. Couple last things. We've been working with Channel Marker, particularly at their new Glebe Road location, with doing an expansion to that facility to include bringing on 8 mental health crisis beds. We have crisis beds that deal with substance use treatment needs in the immediate. Now we're looking at our mental health crisis bed needs here in the Midshore. We have been without mental health crisis beds for 2 years now. They used to be housed up in Kent County. Channel Marker was enthusiastic about going after the opportunity to bring those beds on. It's also going to change up some of their modality of treatment that they're providing and their all the services that they already have in place that are well established. So this will be a new service for them. But they are finishing up construction as we speak and hoping to launch those beds this summer. And that'll be a nice opportunity to have diversion from traditional emergency room utilization to a more focused treatment environment that really does specialize on mental health crisis. Because a lot of times when folks end up in the emergency room, it's not always necessarily the best place for them to get their needs met in the immediate. So that's something we're really excited to bring on board, and we're very grateful for Channel Marker's partnership on this project. Lastly, we have a new team member joining us in the next couple weeks. That's going to be our COVID-19 Wellness Ambassador, working specifically with our wellness and recovery centers and our mental health and behavioral health providers here in the community to address any stigma or concerns that clients and patients have with either adhering to masking and universal precautions to keep themselves safe, or really working to continue to promote vaccine initiatives and work on stigma around that in that population. Because we've seen that the vaccine rates are a lot lower for folks, especially being served in our public behavioral health system. So it is a group that the state is really focusing on how do we meet the needs of that group, educate them, and work to support them, and at least trying to stay safe as we continue to navigate this pandemic. The last piece that I have before Shannon gives her Talbot specific report out is just every year we do get the data for individuals served through the public behavioral health system here in the county. So those are individuals that are receiving Medicaid and accessing their mental health or substance use treatment services through their Medicaid benefit. So in fiscal year 21, Talbot County served 1,589 individuals from mental health services through the public behavioral health system. And for substance use services, we served 707 individuals here in the county. And those numbers actually went down a little bit. Talbot County, unlike the 4 other Midshore counties, did trend down just a little bit. Not exactly sure what the impact of that was necessarily, but I wanted to make sure that you had the most up-to-date numbers on utilization. Now I'll hand it over to Shannon, and we'll take any questions when we're done.
Okay.
Good evening. So for Talbot County specific, Midshore regularly attends and participates in the local drug and alcohol abuse council. The Talbot County Goes Purple, Shore Regional Health, Opioid Task Force, and EOC calls as they're scheduled in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Midshore Katie has served as the Talbot Family Network Local Management Board co-chair since July 2020 to present day. And for fiscal year 22 is serving as the chair. For Midshore, Kaya Behavioral Health Coordinator supports an active leadership role with the local care team for the county, and has supported multiple youth in the county with care planning and supporting intervention arrangements. So having meetings, seeing what support is needed, really boots on the ground assisting. And then Midshore sponsors and promotes the NAMI Walks Your Way Maryland, which was actually this past weekend. It was a virtual event so people could attend at their leisure and post pictures. Midshore has hired a youth outreach coordinator with Fiscal 21 OOCC funds. Midshore's youth outreach coordinator partnerships with the Talbot County Public Schools and continues to support the anti-vaping campaign. Katie also serves on the START Advisory Committee. Midshore participates in the Planning Committee and sponsors the Out of Darkness Suicide Awareness Walk, which usually happens in the fall, September 25th. Midshore organized the first in-person regional Going Purple Together event, which is again in the fall, September 24th. Midshore has coordinated and facilitated Shore Regional Health meetings for high-risk behavioral health consumers who are returning to their communities. Midshore supports leadership and participation in the Talbot County Mental Health Work Group. So that actually started in January. So we're working, Katie and I are on that as well, as far as really a focus on public school system and what we can do in response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
And that was something that we had a lot of inreach from Clay Stamp around, I think in response to some discussions that happened here at the council with what the community here in Talbot County is specifically doing to address the mental health needs. And we've determined that we're starting with our youth, because that's really where a lot of the need is, and trying to figure out how that through our partnership with our local stakeholder group, which has been really nice. We've been meeting routinely. We're looking at data as well as where the gaps are in services, and hoping to have some nice outcomes that we could perhaps present to this group for your endorsement. So.
And then we also have the behavioral health assisted living pilot. So Midshore was actually first within the state, and other regions are starting to open up their facilities as well. So it's individuals with a primary mental health diagnosis who need assistance with activities of daily living. So bathing, getting dressed, eating. So that's going very well so far.
Been very successful, yeah. It's being replicated now in multiple other counties in the state.
And we take referrals from state hospitals, RRP programs, and the community.
We've also included a snapshot of our fiscal growth over the last several years and our current fiscal responsibilities. So if you have questions about any of those grants, we're happy to address those as well.
Okay. All right. Good job, guys. Ms. Price?
Do you need a motion to
Yep.
accept the
Yeah.
letter and everything? I mean, obviously, thank you very much. I mean, that's a lot of information, and we could be here all night discussing all
Of
the
course,
wonderful things
yes.
that
This
you do.
is just a little snapshot.
Yeah, but we have all that information. We appreciate everything that you do. And with that, unless you want to take other comments and make a motion to
Yep.
continue you all on for the fiscal 23 year.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Motion is second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Okay. Yep.
Dilley, so if there's somebody at home watching this and they know they have a loved one that they're concerned with and see them maybe spiraling down, what would be the best way for, who should they reach out to get assistance?
Well, they can always call our office, but of course we keep traditional hours. But I would strongly encourage them to call our Eastern Shore Operations Center, which we like to call like the gateway to resources or crisis response. An individual could call a hotline and get hooked up with urgent care appointment. So we have contracts in all 9 counties on the Eastern Shore where there are availability of appointments just for an initial assessment within 48 hours of contact with the hotline. And the hotline, I don't want to get it wrong, is 1-888-407-8018. And it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There is the opportunity to, if needed, to dispatch mobile crisis, which we now, within the last couple of years, have received funding to make that a 24-hour system.
Great.
So we have teams available around the clock that could come out. It's free of charge. Doesn't matter what kind of insurance you have, they will come and meet with you, and it's all age groups. So, you know, our young population through our aging population, they will respond to any situation, and only the person can define what crisis is. You know, they don't prescribe that. So if there's a need there and that's being solicited, they will come and respond. And I would strongly recommend that as a first stop. Of course, if they would like to wait and give us a call at our office, we are also a resource hub. So that's 410-770-4801. That's Mitchell Behavioral Health. We have behavioral health coordinators that specialize by age group and need. So depending on the nature of what's going on, we'll make sure to connect the family or the individual with someone who really has got a specialized focus on what those needs might be.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Very good question.
Good? Okay. Yep, we appreciate all your help.
Sure.
And we're really blessed to have you in Talbot County to help people, that's for sure.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for your support.
Yep, thank you. Okay. Okay, up next is the Talbot County Department of Social Services. Thank you, Linda, for coming up. Sorry about that little. That's the worst thing that happens to us all day. Yeah. Yeah, would you like to tell the folks, you know, a little bit about you and Ms. Blue? That'd be great.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
thank you. My name is Linda Webb. I am the Director of the Talbot County Department of Social Services. And as you know, I always try to bring the expert with
There
me.
you go.
Tonight's expert is Ms. Juana Blue. She's the DSS Assistant Director for Family Investment. And Family Investment is the part of our organization that administers all of the public assistance programs like SNAP, temporary cash assistance, temporary disability assistance, emergency assistance to families with children, et cetera, et cetera. And also operates our workforce development program, which supports individuals receiving temporary cash assistance or SNAP benefits to prepare for work, find work, and stay in jobs. So we have a new program that we wanted to come and speak with you all about this evening. It is the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program. And Ms. Blue will talk about that, and then we'll do just a very brief update on the Children's Advocacy Center.
All right, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us today. It's a pleasure to talk about a new program, a federally funded program that's funded through the end of September of 2023. This program, as Linda mentioned, is the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program, and we pay arrearages for any water services and water disconnects and wastewater services. So what does the program provide? It provides a one-time payment of $100 or up to $2,000 in arrearage payments for any water disconnect or water source disconnects. These are paid towards any residential arrearages, and if the arrearages are more than 30 days past due, and $100 or more past due. What we do try to encourage, we do see some smaller amounts, maybe $100 or whatever. And because this is a one-time only payment, we try to assist them to get other resources to pay that small amount. And then if they get a larger amount later on, we can definitely assist them with that. But it's very important for everyone to know that this is just a one-time payment, regardless of the amount that we pay out. On the next slide. And who is eligible for the LEOPS program, or LIWOP program as we call it. You have to be a Maryland resident. You have to be responsible for the water bill or wastewater bill. However, we do have some households in the community where the landlord may be the holder of that bill. However, we do have a declaration for the landlord saying that that household is responsible for that bill, and that way we can pay that bill as well. They must live on that property in which the water disconnect is requested, and most of our customers that we're seeing are categorically eligible, which we'll go to that next. However, it is an income-based program. So I talked about categorically eligible. So the ones who are automatically eligible for the program are the ones who are receiving currently some of our services, like energy assistance, SNAP benefits, SSI benefits, some veteran benefits, and things like that. So no matter if there's one person in the household or 50 people in the household, if one of those members receive those benefits, that household is categorically eligible. So we try to make it as easy as possible. So how do we apply? Locally, we recommend that you can come into the office to do applications. The Neighborhood Service Center also has applications for this program. We can also apply online through the MyMD Think portal. As we noticed in a lot of our areas of community areas that, a lot of people don't have access to internet, or they have difficulty navigating through the system. So that's why we do encourage them to come into the office for that assistance, or we can mail them an application. Yeah. And then what else do we need to know about the program? What we did receive for the grant amount for the next 2 years up to September 2023 is $72,133 towards these arrearages. The program, again, like I said, will end the end of September. It began February the 1st of 2022. It is a first come, first served basis. So where are we now? Right now we did do advertisement on our Facebook page. We've contacted some people. We have a great partnership with Easton Utilities, who contact us if they see someone that's in jeopardy of losing getting disconnected from the water or sewage. We finally got approval to pay TRAP payments, which I'm very thankful for that, because we had a lot of TRAP residents who did apply and we could not pay payments for. And we also can pay Oxford payments of arrearages. We are looking for approval from all the other smaller municipalities, and we're working on those to see if we can also assist those customers as well. And I think that is it. And our current, it is slow, I will say, for Talbot County right now. We only paid out so far $1,800, a little over $800 in payments. Because the bills have been so small, we don't have anyone that's really in a dire need of those payments right now.
Very good. Thanks.
Can I ask a question before you move on to the next topic? One of the things that we needed to do in our budget was make about a 50% increase in some of our wastewater treatment plants and those customers in those areas. So you said that this is all, people that are in arrearages, and it's a one-time grant, but we understand that this can be a burden, our enterprise funds, Tillman and various areas like that. How long has this program been in existence? Is it something that was approved by the Maryland legislature? And if so, I wonder if there's a way to expand the program for those types of places, in the counties that have the enterprise funds for the wastewater.
Well, this began February of 2022, and it's all federal grant monies due to COVID. So that's where that budget comes from. And we've asked, even could we expand it to people that have wells and things like that that need fixed, something like that. But they say that this is basically just for the water arrearages program.
Okay, because you mentioned, mentioned wastewater in here,
Yeah,
so those
wastewater.
types of places wouldn't be eligible if they owed the county a certain amount of money, those would not be eligible? Or
If the municipality is approved for payment from the state, yes, we can pay those.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so I'm just going to do a very brief update on the Children's Advocacy Center. As you know, from the times that I've been here before speaking about the CAC, the CAC is a comprehensive response to allegations of child sex abuse, serious physical abuse, or extreme neglect. It is a child-friendly location that operates with a multidisciplinary team of professionals to investigate allegations of child abuse, to provide services to the child and to the non-offending caregivers, both through the investigation as well as through any other systems, including the court system, that may be involved with the aftermath of that child's abuse. And it is a model of best practice to reduce child trauma by minimizing the number of times that a child is interviewed about those incidents, whereas before CACs were created, a child would be interviewed at multiple points along the way by various professionals after an allegation of child abuse or a disclosure on the part of the child about child abuse takes place. We have an 18-year partnership with the local hospital, currently University of Maryland Shore Regional Health, in operating the Children's Advocacy Center. In that setting, we do forensic interviews by specially trained interviewers of children who may have been abused. We operate the 5-county Midshore Medical Program and provide medical examinations for children who have experienced sexual abuse or serious physical abuse. We have a family advocate that provides advocacy services for the child and their family to help support them throughout the process and to be available for children even as they grow. We're no longer working with them directly about the sex abuse, but something comes into their lives where they may need some financial support or some support of some other type. We provide mental health and other therapies. We've begun providing independent living skills to some of the older young ladies that we're still working with. We do team building activities, both for the multidisciplinary team as well as for the children and their families, to help rebuild those relationships after the trauma of sex abuse. And we provide some financial assistance to those families. So I just wanted to update you on our impact in the community. You'll see that for the current year, our family advocate, and we have just one, has through March the 31st, provided 437 sessions with children and families engaged with the Children's Advocacy Center. And we've served 770, can't see that far. Can't see it without the glasses and can't see it with the glasses. It's a real predicament. 770 children and adults have been served this fiscal year, so from last July through the 31st of March. We've conducted 362 forensic interviews in that same period of, I'm reading the totals. 437 sessions with the family advocate, 123 children and adults served, 60 forensic interviews this fiscal year to date, and 13 medical examinations. And you'll see for the last, I guess that's 4.5 fiscal years since 2018, we've had 1,265 sessions with the family advocate, 770 individuals served, 362 forensic interviews, and 95 medical examinations. So this fiscal year to date, we've also provided financial assistance for emergency stabilization to 19 families with 42 children, and child care assistance to 23 children from 11 families. And what we find is that providing the resources to meet these emergency needs helps families focus on healing from the trauma of child abuse. So if we can help eliminate some of the pressure and anxiety of some of these emergency financial situations, they can focus on what they need to, which is healing. So what's new at the CAC? We reported, I think, last time that we had a new medical director, and she is completely onboarded now and is seeing patients, working with the sex abuse nurse examiners, and is beginning to help us do some outreach. She's meeting with the multidisciplinary teams in all 5 Midshore counties and is really enthusiastic about being on board, and we are as enthusiastic about having her with us. We've provided 63 training opportunities this fiscal year to date, that's through March, to members of the multidisciplinary team. That's across all disciplines. As you know, that training is critical to keeping our professionals on the cutting edge of the science around their particular discipline. So it could be law enforcement, medical, forensic interviews, child protective services, mental health. We provide it across all of the disciplines that work with us. And I am thrilled to report that we are well on our way toward reaccreditation. You know that Department of Social Services reaccredits every 4 years. The Children's Advocacy Center reaccredits every 5 years. We just happened to land on both of them this year. We had our site visit on May the 10th. We had 2 reviewers from the National Children's Alliance come and visit us. They interviewed our staff. They met with members of the multidisciplinary team. They did a review of our cases, did a tour of the Children's Advocacy Center. They were thrilled with everything. The National Children's Alliance Board meets in June, and we've been told that we will be recommended for reaccreditation, so we look forward to getting that good news from them sometime toward the end of June. And then finally, here's Ms. Blue's contact information as well as mine. If anyone's interested in learning more about the low-income housing household water assistance program, the Children's Advocacy Center, or anything of the many things that the Department of Social Services does, here's how you can get in touch with us or just walk in to DSS.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Ms. Webb. Ms. Blue, Ms. Price?
I think you answered my question about the wastewater, and obviously the other program is just, it's so critical, and when they have to be interviewed, to keep that down to a bare minimum, because they've already been through it. They've already been through the abuse, and to have to relive it is very difficult. So without your program, it would be much more painful for them. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
No, my questions were answered as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
You know I have a fondness for CASA in my heart, and I absolutely love it. I feel like you're doing the Lord's work with providing water and taking care of children. I can't thank you enough for what you do in such difficult circumstances to help the family as a whole get back to better. And any resources that you'll ever need, I'll be more than happy to rally troops and do what we can to help you, because that's by far one of the most important issues affecting Talbot County right now, and has been for a long time, that is a very troubling one to solve, and it's one of the ones that you just kind of have to be there for them when it does happen. So maybe with better mental health studies, we'll be able to identify those individuals before it happens. But until that time, thank you for being there for the families.
Thank you. We have a great team.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you guys and appreciate you coming tonight.
All right. Thanks. Have a good evening.
You too now. Okay, next up is a presentation of the Chapel District Elementary School Feasibility Study. One of my favorite people is coming up here, Kevin Shafer. He loves coming up too and talking. He loves it. And our buddy Tom King's here. That's his sidekick here. Keeps him straight. How you guys doing tonight?
But I always look up to Kevin.
Yeah. A lot of people do.
I was gonna say, you don't have much choice in that one.
All right, thank you,
Yeah.
President Callahan.
Yeah.
Good evening, members of the council. So tonight, Mr. King and I are here to request support for the Chapel District Elementary School feasibility study document that has been submitted to the council. Tom served as the consultant responsible for the document preparation, and he will provide a summary of the findings, and then he and I will attempt to answer any questions that the council may have.
Yes, well, in order for a school construction project to be eligible for state funding, and as you may know, Talbot County receives, I believe it's approximately 50% of your funding from the state. The Maryland Department of General Services and the Interagency for School Construction require that we do a feasibility study. And that accomplishes a number of goals. It first defines the need, and then it defines a solution. It's important to note that in the case of Chapel District Elementary School, the state seems to feel that it may be eligible in that portions of it were built in the 1950s with additions in the 1990s and most recently in 2000. So it is by definition an aging school. It does not currently meet requirements for energy efficiency and modern safety requirements, of which there are many. Also, it does not currently meet the requirements for housing the enrollment. My study was based on enrollment projections provided by the state, and I think that's a key element that we'll get into in a moment here in the discussion. The state also requires that we provide you, the board, a number of options. And they're also vitally interested in knowing how the local community will support the effort for some sort of a project at Chapel District Elementary School. In fact, without that support, the project is essentially dead in the eyes of the state. They won't even consider it unless they hear some recommendation from the board. As part of this process, we met with a planning committee, representatives of the community. So this is not entirely derived from just my input. It is a result of input we got from the staff and the community. So we came up with 3 options. The first option was to simply modernize the building. And that means that we would upgrade the heating and air conditioning systems, probably go with a geothermal system. We would improve the wastewater treatment facilities. The school is currently served by an individual well, which is somewhat inadequate for fire suppression, so we'd upgrade those systems. We'd upgrade all the energy aspects of the building, efficiency aspects, and also increase the classroom efficiency. But we would not build any new construction, which means that this option does not totally meet the goals set forth in the educational specification, but it would be the least expensive option. Option 2 would be to modernize the building, do all the things I just mentioned, but also build additional classrooms, which would accommodate the enrollment projections over the next 10 years. But it's important to note that those enrollment projections are based on state information. I have no way of knowing how those numbers were derived, and your numbers may be different, or in your community thinking, and this is the key element that needs to be considered, I believe, in your deliberations. Whether or not the enrollment projections for Talbot Elementary or Chapel Elementary are what you truly expect to see happen there, because the state's enrollment projections are relatively flat for the next 10 years. There's a small increase, I believe, but not much in the way of an increase. So it's hard for me to justify more space if we don't have the enrollment projection that is.
Could you give us those 2 numbers, because they're not in this shorter presentation?
The
What the
cost-
state projection is and what your projection is?
So as far as the enrollment, Ms. Price?
Yes.
So the enrollment numbers that are currently estimated, so there's a document that is provided as outside of the presentation, and it's the total cost of ownership comparison tool at the top there. There is, I'm sorry, it's in the middle section. 363 is what, if the project were to be considered right now, this year for planning, 363 would be the number that the state would recognize for enrollment.
And that number goes up slightly over the 10-year period. I'm looking for it here in my report. You'd think I'd be able to find it quickly, but it does increase, but it's not a significant increase.
And real quick, before you continue, do you have a different projection, Kevin?
So, so my projection is not what would be considered. So it's a very rigid formula that the state uses, and so they're going to look at whatever year that we ask for planning, which would basically be the design phase. They're going to look at that 7th year projection, and that is something that changes each year. But as of right now, when we're submitting this, the 2021 Facilities Master Plan is what we utilize and the state utilizes. Those are the state-approved projections that, through whatever I said, the 363.
Kevin, I believe I have the numbers here that Ms. Bryce is looking for. We're currently dealing with 346, and it's projected out at 363. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, so the current enrollment is 346.
So those are the parameters that we're dealing with, not a significant increase.
The only reason I ask is that there's a humongous development that's going in TRAP that could be, that over a long period of time is 2,500 homes.
Yes.
And that's not being taken into consideration at all, so.
So you're
Exactly.
right. You're right. You're exactly right. And there's a number of other developments in Easton that are, that are in various stages of approval. And those developments are also not included in this number. And we cannot include them currently, even right now with the current Facilities Master Plan, which will be submitted in July. That will not take into account. Now, there's a lot of information that we're providing to the state that talks about these developments coming forward, but for the state enrollment projections, we are not able to include those developments until they're more realized. So
I'll let you continue. Makes it hard to decide how big a school this needs to be.
Yes.
So there's an important distinction to make when we consider options 2 and 3, which do meet the current enrollment projections. Option 2 would be to modernize the building and add some classrooms to the building. There are always compromises and inconveniences when you're modernizing an existing building for staff and so forth, and there are some inefficiencies involved in that and additional cost. Option 3 would be to build an entirely new school, which would presumably be a more efficient building and be more in line with current construction standards and education standards. So option 3 also would provide the opportunity to expand the building in the future if these enrollment projections prove to be in question, or if you want to consider future additions. Option 2 would more or less max out the building, because the problem with Chapel Elementary is the interior spaces, the fixed spaces, support spaces like the administrative areas, the cafeteria, the media center, they cannot be expanded, they won't be expanded under this. So the school can really not support a great deal more in the way of student population. We'd be maxed out, essentially, if we go with option 2. While it meets all the standards, there would be no real reasonable opportunity to add on to it in the future. Option 3 would give you probably more flexibility, certainly more flexibility to add on to the building in the future should that need arise. But both options 2 and option 3 contain exactly the same number of square footage. It's just that option 2 is a renovation project and option 3 is a totally new building. So if we look at the next slide, that shows you option 2 would add 6 new classrooms and some support space that is woefully inadequate in the building, as well as an expanded health suite and so forth, as well as other safety features, exterior doors, exits, upgraded hardware, and so forth. So without getting into all the details, that does meet the enrollment projection that is included in here based on the state's guidelines. Option 3, well, this is, another aspect of this is what do we do with the site? I spent some time up there observing the auto drop-off, parent drop-off operations, as well as the school buses, and we do have some safety issues there. Current thinking is that we don't want to mix buses with automobiles, so we'd make some refinements in the site circulation, regardless of which option you would choose, to bring it up to the current safety standards. And it somewhat reflects what we did at Easton Elementary School, where we have the buses totally separate from the automobiles. And today, we have apparently parents that want the flexibility of bringing their students to school or using the bus. Up there, if you are there during the loading parent drop-off, some of the traffic is backed out onto the highway, so it's a safety issue. So we'd be addressing that. We'd be looking at the wastewater treatment plant and other infrastructure issues. And option 3 is a very simple diagram of how a new building would look if it were constructed to meet the square footages that are currently mandated under this study. And let's go on to the next slide. And this is how that the site would be handled. We would do something similar to what we did at Easton Elementary. We would leave the school intact while we build the new building immediately behind it. And then when the building is completed, move the students into the new building and demolish the existing school and again upgrade the automobile, the auto drop-off circulation as well as the bus circulation and achieve the same goals as we had in option 2. The one bit of conflict here is you do have a community park facility there that is shared with the school system on the site that will be interrupted as part of this scheme, so we'd have to make some accommodation for that. And lastly, we look at the costs, and obviously option 1, which doesn't meet the program, but it was one we wanted to present to you. This is the option that does not create new classroom space, so it keeps the school at its current size, $15,900,000. Option 2, $19 million, and option 3, which is the new building, $21 million, almost $22 million. Now, I would have to say that, as you probably no doubt know, any cost estimating in this current environment is a real funny money in a sense. This happens to be what I can come up with right now as of May 2022. The only thing I can say is the only value for this in terms of cost is that if the costs will go up, and they certainly will, the relative differences and the comparisons will remain somewhat the same. So I would view this chart as more of a relative study of how these projects line up, and not exactly what the actual cost may be, because with what we're dealing with in construction now, we can't get a bid that's good for more than 2 or 3 weeks.
That's option 3 price, does that include the demolition and all the site work?
It does, yes, it does. And that brings up a good question, because if you're doing what we call selective demolition, which is required in a renovation project, you have to be careful when you're demolishing ceilings and so forth to preserve the structure. When we do a new construction, we just do a total demolition, just level it with machines, and you recycle materials, but you don't have to be as careful. So the unit cost of demolition goes down in a new construction project. Also, we have the cost of, under options 1 and 2 of, you can go ahead with that. We have the cost of portable classrooms, which we need to bring on site for the house students under either one of those renovations, options 1 and 2, and that's included in the cost.
Are there any right now? No.
So at the end of the day, the option 3 does present the highest first cost, and we do a life cycle cost analysis. It is slightly higher than option 2 by virtue of the fact that the first cost of the building is higher. And a life cycle cost is a function of what is the first cost and then the operating cost over a 30-year period. So I can tell you that the operating costs for these schools, and when I did this formula, was up in the $30 million range. That's a yearly accumulated cost for energy, management, Kevin's maintenance costs, and so forth. So it's a big number, the operating costs. The operating costs for options 2 and 3 are very close because they're very similar in size. But it's reasonable to assume that option 3 would have a longer life expectancy. And the state mandates that these concepts should be projected out for at least 40 years. So when you finish this project, you have a project that will be viable for the next 40 years. And don't come back and ask for more money in 40 years until it's exhausted its life expectancy. So these are 40-year goals in terms of projections.
So that does complete the presentation. I know that there's lots more information, though, that needs to be discussed. So, you know, we can kind of make this a question and answer, but I would want to draw the council's attention to the fact that I did send a supplementary email that had additional information in it regarding how our presentation went to the Board of Education on Wednesday. Now, that did not make it into this presentation, which is why I sent the email. But ultimately, Tom is bound by his professional standards to make a recommendation. That recommendation, based on the current situation, specifically to really need to consider enrollment, is option 2 from Tom. And then that was presented to the board. The board unanimously decided that they would prefer option 3 for the reasons that I stated, and I just want to kind of go over those very quickly. So as Tom spoke about the site limitations, and that refers to the current infrastructure and logistics of the existing building, would create some limitation on for future expansion. And the, as we talked about earlier, the current residential developments that are in process is something the board is very concerned about in future enrollment. So they would like to, and they're advocating for a building that would have the opportunity for expansion. And so although the option 3 would be the exact same size as the renovation from a square footage standpoint, it would situate the building in a more favorable situation if we had to expand later. So that's kind of the summary there. The instructional disruption is a real topic. I've been through a renovation, an occupied renovation at St. Michael's, and Tom has too. He was there for that. And it is a significant disruption. There are pros and cons. You know, obviously it's nice that the kids get to experience and get to see kind of what a renovation looks like and the process of it. But we also have been through a replacement situation, which we all saw take place just recently with Easton Elementary School. And it certainly is better from a instructional standpoint and from an operational standpoint to have the two separate, and it's obviously safer as well. And so that was an important issue for the board. And then the last thing was the comparable cost of option 2 and 3, and the $2.76 million difference between the two is, you know, I'm going to say is suspect, and that's mostly due to the market conditions. So that's the board's position. They, as I said, unanimously recommended and approved option 3, and so that is what I'm kind of required to, as a board employee, obviously, to carry forward to the council as the recommendation, and would place that under your consideration for supporting the submission as the board dictated. So with that, any questions?
Okay. All right. Well.
On option 2, there's a corridor in the middle of the school that was highlighted yellow. Is that corridor currently there? Okay.
No, that's a new corridor. We put it in there to improve circulation and also to create some support base. And I may add that Chapel is blessed with or cursed with a central courtyard, which is currently overgrown, and it's a maintenance issue. So we're proposing under option 2 to pave that and make it an outdoor learning court. And as a outgrowth of that, I added the corridor to improve circulation.
Gotcha. I thought there was a project at one time. I thought Ms. Sepp led that to do a garden out there, but that's a lot of work.
Yes, and that, I mean, everybody has good intentions
Yes.
for those spaces, and it just doesn't stand the test of time, I guess.
Yeah. And then the environmental yard on option 2 that's out back where you would be expanding the classrooms. Did you consider that like a limitation?
So actually that was, I think that's
an existing environmental yard.
So it was pulled from current design. It's not really something that has stood the test of time either out there. So it's kind of just a grass area.
Part of the educational program is to have the students have outdoor experience with the environment and nature and that sort of thing, conservation.
Gotcha. And they do have a much better control on the traffic out there, the cars coming in, but when you make a left in there in the morning, and then the cars they sit on the shoulder of the road to make a left in until the space to go. It's
sort of controlled chaos.
Yeah.
I think probably the thing that disturbed me most was that the automobile traffic sometimes travels through the bus area, and the buses park parallel to the curb. And that, in today's thinking, is a real no-no, because you don't know what children of that age are going to do. And if they see mom, they're going to dart for the car, and then you've got an issue.
Yes. And if you make the left, if too many cars go left, then they'll block it so that the buses can't get in there. I drop my son off there in the morning.
Okay. Well, I probably saw you there.
We get there 15 minutes early, so we don't have to deal with any of this. But yes, that's all I have.
This is kind of a square footage question. The new one that we built over here in Easton, what was the square footage of that?
That was 128,000 square feet.
And this one new is around 45 or 50.
Yes.
Actually, I think it would be 55.
54,000.
Yeah,
So
right around 55.
So half the size.
So it's half the size. And this is grades from 1 to 5.
This is
Pre-K, as well as a daycare facility. Crystal Atkins would be there as well. So it's roughly half the size so I tailored it more or less on that concept, just as something that would be familiar for you to see.
Right.
But it would be expandable to perhaps 600 students relatively easily, because the core areas are what really is a function of whether you can expand the school. The gymnasium, the cafeteria, the administrative area, and the media centers, those sorts of things.
So the concept of expanding, so I think what was holding you up a little bit, Mr. King, was like projecting down the road, there's going to be a limit of really no more than 350 to 60 kids in the next 10 years. It's going to be a sort of a constant 340 to 360 back and forth a little bit. So that's some of your thoughts.
Yes. The enrollment projections are what I had to go with.
Right.
I couldn't assume, well, these projections are wrong.
Yeah.
This school's going to grow, and I know about the development down in Trapp.
Yeah.
I knew all those things, but I can't answer those questions. I have to deal with what's in front of me.
Would there, I know this is something even more, because, so the Cordova area, I don't, unless council can tell me any different, I'm not sure there's a whole lot of projection of growth there.
Matthewstown Road, what on Matthewstown Road currently goes to Chapel? Do you know?
It's basically cut off there, so there's not much on Matthewstown that goes to Chapel.
Right. But one of those new developments, and I really should have spoken more about that one, more so than Trapp. I had White Marsh in my head.
Yeah, right.
But, if that comes, then White Marsh gets overcrowded, and where do they go? And then you have to redistrict the Easton Elementary kids again. And so it's going to happen. But really, there is that development that is out closest to Cordova on the east side of Route 50.
Yes, the
right?
Gannon
And
Farm,
that's
or Gannon Estates.
correct, and that's maybe 500 homes, something like that,
It is.
ballpark. And then there's the one that's off of Oxford Road that's planned.
Yes.
That you think is supposed to go to Easton Elementary, and that we just did that school. So regardless, you have 3 very, very large projected developments that will take a lot of time. But that's the thing, with all of these developers who are building these things, those impact fees don't even begin to cover, the schools and the amount of children and the school construction and all of that. And so it's really difficult, to plan and this.
Yeah, and so I know Dr. Griffith would agree with you on the impact fees. It's an issue that she's harped on for a while. But I do want to make the council, I want to be very clear with the council that the state currently, based on my estimations, Chapel is undersized. So right now the building is about 46,000 square feet. So we would be gaining in option 2 and 3 approximately 10,000 square feet, which is going to increase the capacity, which is the 6 classrooms that we're talking about. So there is going to be some increase with this plan that we currently have. So I'm not as concerned about, I know we have to be watching the horizon closely with these developments, but right now, and this is kind of the next topic that I wanted to get into very briefly, is schedule. So I know that schedule is important for budgeting purposes, obviously, but currently, best case scenario is that this fall, in October, when I come to present the capital improvement plan, potentially, if the council supports, we would be asking for planning. So that would allow us to continue the process of planning for the project, go through the design process, and then the following year would be actual construction, whichever option we move forward with, assuming that we move forward. So we're looking at a 2+ year window before there would be any funding necessary from the council, because the state funding would come first, similar to Easton Elementary School. So I just kind of wanted to have the council, make you aware of what the time frame we're looking at. Now there would be some design costs, but the state does now participate in design costs. They will do that. Now it comes out of the total amount, you know what I mean? So will there be less for construction? Typically we fund that through local funds. But I just wanted everybody to be aware of what the time frame we're looking at. I know it's quickly approaching, I guess, with under that.
That time frame, so that would be design stuff in 23, but would construction start in 23 or 24?
It would not. So actual construction would not begin under this most aggressive schedule.
Right. I'm with you.
It would not begin until June, July of 2024. So
2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a little more than 2 years. And like I said, that would not be so. So the other piece to this is we have to assume that the state's going to support the project. So even if the council supports it, there's no guarantee that the state is going to support it. But assuming that the state does, then that funding would come first, July 1st, and then that would probably make it into January of 2025 before the council would actually have to start the county would start to fund the project. So
another thing that people should understand, it isn't 50-50. We don't get 50% from the state. I mean, if you just kind of look at these numbers, there's a lot of costs that aren't covered,
yes.
By the state. So, for example, in one of these estimates, a total cost of $25 million, that's 10 coming from the state and 15 from us.
That's correct.
So it really is more like 2/3, 1/3. And I know that when we did, the reason I asked about whether or not the state numbers matched our projected enrollment was when we did Easton Elementary School, the locals paid for all those additional things where I don't remember what the gap was in the number of students, but if it was 1,100 and we thought it was 1,200, we paid 100% of the square footage for the additional 100 kids, or however many it was. And so that, that's why I asked the question
yes.
about, we only get funding for the state's numbers, even if we know otherwise. And so if in 2 years, now I won't be here, Frank won't be here, these two might.
I might still have a kid in 4th grade.
Okay, you'll
I don't know how
here.
well he does.
You might. I'm saying you won't be up here making the decision on the final thing. But if that say the development that's on the east side 50 in Gannon, and in the middle of this project, they sell 200 or 300 homes, and all of a sudden there's,
yes.
200 or 300 or 400 more kids in the middle of this project. Is the state gonna step it up, and we need to change? We need to do an add-on, addition in the middle of this project. How does that work as far as that funding, or are we completely on the hook for that? Because they're probably not going to give us money again in the middle of a project or right when a project ends if all of a sudden we have hundreds more kids, which is possible.
Yeah, so the short answer is that, under a situation like that, the state could participate in that. That is something. So if we were looking at an addition, that's something certainly we could put in a capital improvement project. But the truth of the matter is, short term, if something happened quickly where we had that development take off, we're going to be looking at a portable classroom situation until a capital improvement could take place.
So then my question is, maybe we don't do this yet. Maybe we wait a year to go forward with the project design and see what's happening, because those 3 projects right now are all happening at the same time in Talbot
yes.
County, and we plan for something this size, knowing what's coming and how, I don't know, the interest rates in the market and everything is so volatile right now. We don't know who's going to be buying houses, who's going to be moving in or out. But maybe it makes sense to say, maybe we should sit back for a year and not necessarily approve this and see where these developments go so that we can plan for something that's more realistic based on what we know and not say, oh, maybe the state will pick it up. Well,
Right. No, and I understand the concern. There's no question that there's some uncertainties surrounding the residential development situation in Talbot, but that does not change the situation that we're in with Chapel, and that is that this is a 30-year-old, since the last renovation, so in other words, it's a 30-year-old building, and we have some failing infrastructure there. So one thing is absolutely certain is a roof. So it doesn't make sense to put a 40-year roof on a building that you might then turn around and renovate. The same thing's true with mechanical systems. So one of the things, and Tom can probably speak better about this, but one of the things that is important for us is a redundancy of systems. So new buildings require that you have 2 boilers or whatever the system we end up going with. Right now, Chapel has a 1950s boiler that heats that building, and that's something that is a legitimate concern. And so it's how much do you put in? How many Band-Aids do you put on a building that's was built in '52?
well, obviously you're not going to do a roof and some of those larger things, but maybe you do a Band-Aid for a year. I'm very concerned. Like I said, I'm not going to be here to vote on this ultimate,
Right.
thing. We can send it forward this year, or, we can see what, realistically what you can do to hobble along for a year that might cost us several $100,000, but at the same time could save us, I don't know, 5 or 10 million because we would get more state funding for a larger school.
Right, and so like I said, I don't disagree with you that there's certainly some uncertainty. I think the issue that I would draw the council back to is this is a planning process. So this is a non-committal, from a monetary standpoint, request that's before you tonight. This is just allowing us to continue to plan. So we're going to have some time before we would get to a situation where, and we just went through it with Easton Elementary School. So even if we go through the feasibility study process, approve option 2, 3. Hopefully, my recommendation would be to go with the board on 3 for planning purposes, and then we see where this shakes out, because it's going to give us a year in a minimum, and that's certainly not even a committal for funding from the council in a year.
Right, but are we married to the square footage now, or in October?
So
CIP?
from a design standpoint, that's why the benefit of option 3 is so profound. So that is something that we could change. So if the enrollment situation changes significantly, the design aspect is very easy to work with. If we were to continue to pursue a planning process for option 2, then we would be,
I just want to know when the
boxed in.
state's going to get the square footage number, and when we're married to that, and that we can't, increase it.
Well, right now, for the planning purposes, we're married to what the state projection is. So
If I may add, though, there's quite a bit of reference in the guidelines that I follow in doing these studies to the state's interest in knowing how the local community feels about this project. So if you disagree, and maybe I'm going out on a limb here, but if you disagree with their enrollment projections, that's probably the first thing in my mind that you should say. We're very concerned about the fact that this study is based on enrollment projections that we don't agree with. And to me, that is the fundamental pivotal issue here, because the rest of this is bricks and mortar that we can make it work. But as I said, option 3 gives you a great deal more flexibility in the future. Either way, if the enrollment stays the same, fine. But if it increases, it gives you far more option.
Well, I think that's important. Whatever we decide to do here, I think that's very important to message to get across to them.
So just to be clear, there is a process for that, and that's in the facilities master plan, and that language is in there currently, and I can share that, bless you, yeah. I can share that with the council so that you can see we're documenting very well these developments that are on the horizon. It's just, the state's aware, I don't mean to sound harsh, but they don't care until it's a reality.
Well, the theory behind this is your community better than they do.
Right.
They feed us information, we send it back to them, and we just do this process. But if there's a significant change in the parameters that I based my study on, then they need to hear that.
I just had one question about the portables listed. Are those permanent, or is that just during the construction phase?
Just during construction.
Okay.
Mr. Shafer, the current enrollment of 346, that is over the school's rated capacity today?
No, that is not over the rated capacity today. The actual rated capacity of Chapel right now under its current design is 431. So here's the issue with that is that each year we have to, under changing guidelines from the IAC, we have to submit basically, when we're actually doing one right now, a capacity study to see where the actual, because it's a fluctuating number based on the actual usage of the building. And the other thing is that, so Mr. Lesher, I don't want to get in the weeds, but I'm going to do a little bit here. And Ms. Price, I know, is aware of some of this. So currently under the Built to Learn Act that has been approved legislation, there is and I've talked to the council about this before, but there is a Maryland Condition Index that's being created. Two facets to that, which is it's basically a rating system for every building in the state, every school building in the state. Two facets. There's a Facilities Condition Index, which basically is looking at the building infrastructure, and then there's an educational sufficiency aspect to it that basically judges what Tom talked about, the classroom size and whether it's educationally sufficient in each of the buildings, and the infrastructure, the common areas, and they're appropriately sized and that type of thing. So those two numbers come together for a rating. That is in the process right now, and so ultimately Chapel would probably rate lower than the 431 as far as the actual state rated capacity. And what we're looking at though is with the additional square foot, which is why there's that 10,000 square foot discrepancy between what the state recognizes Chapel should be and what it currently is. Under that new number, we'd be looking at a state rated capacity with adequately sized classrooms of about 471. So that's what our goal is. That builds in some cushion, allows for development, and it also, under the current EdSpec document, which the feasibility study was meant to piggyback on, one of the biggest goals was to allow for 3 classrooms per grade level. It allows for smaller class sizes right now, and it gives us capacity for greater enrollment in the future. So I think that was a long-winded answer to your question, but.
When I'm looking at the site plan for option 1 and 2, and then option 3, this is on a septic system, right? Or is it?
It is, yes.
Do you know where that is?
Yeah, the septic system is, if you can bring up the site plan, septic system is in the far upper corner of the site, the western end of the site. It is a drain field system.
Up above the fields?
Yeah, it's just beyond the play field you see on the upper part of the site plan. And the school is also on essentially an oversized domestic well. It has no tandem backup. Even the storage capacity for the sprinkler system is currently questionable. So in the event of an emergency situation, it wouldn't take long without fire department support for the storage capacity to be maxed out.
Appropriately sized at the time, but
Right.
things change.
And of course, I have brought this up every time I can. There's no cell phone tower on that property, and I know that there isn't service out there, and if we could fit it on the property or across the street, whatever we can do, I would love to see that.
Yes, I'm with you on that, Mr. DeVillio.
And we would likely, I didn't show it, but we'd likely put a play field immediately in front of the school where the current school is now to take some of the burden off of the play field that's being destroyed. So we'd give some thinking about how, if this option is taken into consideration, we'd give planning for additional play fields.
Yeah, the backfield is the big one. That's the one that's used for Little League regularly, that's in the best condition. And then there's another baseball field off to the side that's used for T-ball, which is in fairly good condition. But Cordova residents have put a lot of money into that field recently. There's a lot of scholarships or signs and sponsorships out there. That is an important field for the sport.
So that is the downside of this. It does essentially destroy some of those fields, and we'd have to replicate those elsewhere.
I guess, but those would be okay on top of the drain field.
Yes, they can be.
And how many acres is this taking, roughly?
It's,
I think the site is 16.
I think I got it up.
wait a minute.
19.96, does that sound right?
Off the top of my head.
If that's
I'm
what it
sorry.
says in the report, it must be right. Yes, 19.87 acres. Built in 1952, the original school, which is still there in the mix of that building.
So if we are now, if we're below capacity, but the state will allow us, because of their new modern standards, more square footage per student, larger. Presumably, if you build new, none of the classrooms would be as small as the 1950s classrooms. They
That's
would all
correct.
be larger classrooms, even though
Yes.
you don't intend to raise class sizes.
Under the current enrollment trend that the state recognizes, no, we would not be increasing class sizes.
And we have this current enrollment of 346 because of the students that are now bused from Easton, Chapel East, and so forth, up to this corner of the county.
It's a large district, yes.
And we don't project the growth in this county to be taken, and the school recognizes that the growth is not taking place in this part of the county. It's taking place it's projected to take place in Easton. It's projected to take place in Trapp largely. If we add classrooms up here in Chapel District, it locks us into continuing to bus students from Easton up to Chapel District. Why aren't we considering building new classrooms where the students are now and where we project the additional students would be in the future? And I know we need to renovate the school anyway, that the school's aging, we've got to do something about that infrastructure there. But why would we expand capacity there when we already have to bus students from Easton to get up to fill those classrooms, and they're even below capacity now, when we're stuffed to the gills in Easton and other parts of the county? Wouldn't it make sense to build those classrooms where the students actually are and are projected to be?
So I understand your logic, absolutely. In an ideal world, we would do that, but what we're talking about is a new facility. I mean, that's really the truth of the matter is, and that would be wildly expensive. Property acquisition, all of the infrastructure that would go into creating a site, Chapel is a large district, but it just so happens that some of these developments that are being planned and are approved are bordering on the district, and so it's not going to be a situation that would be violating our own policies and bus ride times and that type of thing. So, like I said, I understand the logic of the question, but I think that there's limitations on what we can do reasonably. In the future, are we looking at a new building in Talbot? Possibly, but like with Trapp, the Lakeside or Lakeview or whatever the project is, that's a 20-year build out. I mean, we have time to deal with those situations. The ones in Easton are not. We're looking at a quick turnaround.
So remind me how many kids are in Trapp?
White Marsh?
Right now,
White Marsh,
right now it's we've redistricted. No. I think it's like in the 280s, pushing 300.
Okay. Gotcha.
Did we leave ourselves room in Easton? So in this particular case, if for some reason it needed to be expanded, with this particular design, and this is probably not the design, you can add on to it easily. Is there room at Easton Elementary to add more to it? I know we're getting on a much bigger topic,
right.
but we really have to think about the overarching.
Well, the reality is that at the time Easton Elementary School was built, it was the largest elementary school in the state of Maryland.
Yep.
And it still holds that title, at least there have been a few others. I can tell you in my experience, to give you a little background, when I first started designing schools, elementary schools were 400 to 600 students. To have a 1,200 student school is an exception. As far as the physical limitations are concerned, the Easton site is pretty well maxed out. It would be possible to build a few classrooms, but then we'd be looking at a student population of approaching 1,500 students. I'm not sure that the state would even sanction that, but from a logistical standpoint, which I believe is your question, it would be a challenge because it's a very tight site.
So we've got, so this is a current one. White Marsh is the next projected school to be evaluated, is that right?
So it's a good point, Mr. DeVillio. And so Talbot has a long history of renovating schools based on their years of service. And so we would like to maintain that trend. It's the easiest way, and it tends to hold true, as buildings reach that magic number of 30 years, which is what the state recognizes as full participation from them. Actually, Easton High School would be next. And that is part of the reason why I'm kind of pushing for this chapel project to move more quickly than not, is because I know that is going to be a significant, to say the least, project for the council to consider. And that, we might be looking at a decade, and that would be well past its expected useful life for Easton High School. So it is something that needs to be considered in the big scheme of things.
So going back to my first argument about keeping Moton and Dobson, what about Mount Pleasant?
Okay, so I have thought about that. That is not something that I've discussed with any leadership. And so
I have, so you're good.
Okay,
You're safe.
all right. So, Mount Pleasant is a viable option. It would need a renovation. But also we are, and I'm sure, this is no secret, but we are max capacity there with administrative side of things. It's not just, the middle management people. We've got infants and toddler staff, and the consortium staff. We share that building with a lot of different, facets of TCPS. So yeah, I know we have a school building that is right in Easton. I don't know what that would take. We would need to put some more thought into how that would look.
Gotcha.
It's probably, you have the school building right in Easton. It's probably easier to move staff to have them work someplace else if you had to, when you have the population in Easton. Half the population of the county is in Easton, so we need to think about that. But I know we're getting completely off topic,
Right.
but it makes sense to consider all of the schools, that we have before we make a big decision like this. And of course, this is going to leap into the next council. So the decision we make here, I think that based on the history that we have and the fact that we just did a $50 million school, that we need to ask the questions while we're here, even though the next council is going to be the one that has to ultimately decide.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do we need at this point?
He needs a letter.
Well,
And they need a choice. Can we sit on this tonight, or do you need this tonight?
No, certainly. I know this is all being thrown at the council, but just to be clear, and this is what has been done in the past. It was done for Easton Elementary. Honestly, the council, really doesn't even need to weigh in necessarily tonight on an option. That is something that can be discussed later on. Because there is a funding difference there. So I know that, with Easton Elementary, the council put a lid on what the contribution was going to be locally. And that is something that you, as a governing body, can do at a later time. But I guess what I would ask the council for tonight is if I could get a letter of support. So that's the formal request. And that's really all that needs to be discussed with the IAC at this point, is that the council understands, as I said in the email, that the Chapel District project is a viable one. So that's kind of where I'm at.
So if we give you support with this letter, is there a cost with that?
No, there's no obligation as far as cost goes at this point. Okay. This is just stating that you understand that in what the capital improvement plan letter that you generate is basically just says that we support the plan, and pending available funding, at the time when it would be needed.
Right, but we all know, once the ball gets rolling, it doesn't stop.
The planning process has to take place regardless of which option you go forward with. Right. And we know that we've got a roof and other infrastructure with limited life expectancy remaining, and so and the other reasons that you've outlined why delay on this project would not be prudent. You need to get started with the planning process, regardless of which option ultimately is pursued. And so I'll move for the letter of support to move forward with the planning project.
And I'll second.
Okay, so I want to see the letter. I want to see that verbiage in there that you said about us disagreeing with the state projected enrollment numbers at this point. We're also missing a council member, so can we or can we not wait 2 weeks to see a finalized letter before we ultimately approve it?
Well, this does not lock us. We know something's got to happen here, but this leaves open the option of which of these three avenues is pursued.
Right, but what we're saying tonight is we support spending $20 million.
No, that is not what we're saying
Well-
tonight. What we're saying tonight is that the school district needs to move ahead with a planning project on Chapel District Elementary School. That planning, it is timely, and it must begin this year.
Okay, I still would like to see the letter. We've voted on sending letters before we saw the verbiage. So my question to you is, do you need the letter to go out now, or is 2 weeks after we see what the proposed letter is certainly adequate for you, yes or no?
So I would answer that tonight it would be ideal if the council would support the as Mr. Lesh said, and as I've said, recognize the need at Chapel. That's all I'm asking for at this point. And we can certainly talk about the verbiage that is in that letter, and I know that's generated by staff.
Okay.
So that's something that you.
So as long as we agreed, to have that type of verbiage in there.
Okay. Madam Secretary, we got a motion and a second on the floor. Could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Appreciate the good work. Okay. Moving ahead here. So let's, introduction of an administrative resolution. Madam Secretary, could you read that into the record, please?
Administrative resolution authorizing a transfer of paid paramedics participating in the employees combined system to the law enforcement officers pension system, LEOPS. Whereas effective on July 1st, 2021, the County Council of Talbot County, Maryland, the County Council, acting on behalf of Talbot County, Maryland, Talbot County, became a participating governmental unit in the law enforcement officers pension system, LEOPS, approving participation by its eligible law enforcement officers employed by the Talbot County Sheriff's Office in LEOPS. And whereas paid paramedics employed by Talbot County paramedics who currently participate in the Maryland Employees Pension System and Retirement System, collectively referred to as the Employees Combined System, or ECS, are also eligible to participate in LEOPS in accordance with Maryland Code Annotated State Personnel and Pensions, SPP, Section 31-2A-01D. And whereas the County Council has determined it would be in the best interest of the county and its citizens, as well as the eligible paramedics, to withdraw eligible paramedics from the ECS and transfer them to LEOPS, which is operated and maintained by the Board of Trustees for the Maryland State Retirement and Pension System, the system, for eligible law enforcement personnel throughout the state of Maryland. And whereas in accordance with SPP Section 31-2A-03A, at least 60% of the eligible paramedics have petitioned to become members of LEOPS and have elected to withdraw and make a transfer from the ECS to LEOPS under the terms and conditions appertaining hereto. And whereas in accordance with SPP Section 31-2A-03A1, an administrative resolution of the County Council is required by ECS to approve and effectuate participation of eligible paramedics in LEOPS. Now therefore be it resolved that the County Council of Talbot County, Maryland, hereby authorizes, approves, and agrees to implement the LEOPS for eligible paramedics in Talbot County, Maryland, and further agrees to the withdrawal of such paramedics from the ECS and the transfer of such paramedics to the LEOPS. And be it further resolved that the County Council approves the withdrawal of paramedics from the ECS effective on June 30th, 2022 at 11:59 p.m. and participation in the LEOPS effective on July 1st, 2022 at 12 a.m. pursuant to SPP Section 31-2A-03A and Section 31-302. And be it further resolved that in accordance with SPP Section 26-202B162 and 2, eligible paramedics hired on or before June 30th, 2022 shall have a one-time irrevocable election to join and participate in the LEOPS effective July 1st, 2022 by submitting a written application to the State Retirement Agency before July 1st, 2022. And be it further resolved that in accordance with SPP Sections 26-201A6, 26-202A, and 31-2A-3A-2 3, all eligible paramedics hired on or after July 1st, 2022 shall not be entitled to join the ECS, but shall be in and part of the LEOPS. And be it further resolved that this administrative resolution shall take effect immediately upon adoption. Introduced by the County Council of Talbot County, Maryland, at a regular meeting on May 24th, 2022, at which meeting copies were available to the public for inspection. Adopted by the County Council of Talbot County, Maryland, at a regular meeting on May 24th, 2022, at which meeting copies were available to the public for inspection. Given under our hands in the Great Seal of Talbot County this 24th day of May in the year of our Lord, 2022.
Good job.
Good.
Susan, is that about the worst thing you've ever had to read with all that?
Did you memorize that?
Which section?
Got to cut down on those sites.
Yeah, that's good. Council?
I'm happy to move this forward. Again, this council has worked really hard to make sure that we're providing the benefits to retain good staff, and I'm happy to make the motion that we approve this administrative resolution.
So do we raise hands for introduction, though, instead of making
yes.
motions?
Mm-hmm.
Introduced by the four of us present.
Yep.
And I agree. It's it was a long time coming for our sheriff's deputies, and we're happy to be able to include our paramedics. And hopefully next year we'll get the legislation to get our correctional officers into this program as well. It's very, very important with what they do. 30 years or however long is way too long in that field. So we're happy to be able to get this group in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If Mr. Dilley's motion is still on the floor, I'll second.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Okay, good. Okay, next up, airport.
I think he left.
Did he? He flew out. Flew out.
Flew out of here.
How you doing, guys?
Hey, good.
Good.
Learned a lot tonight.
I see you brought the captain here with you.
That's right.
Yeah, you did.
Don't go anywhere without
No.
the chairman of the board.
There you go. Tell us something good, man. Tell us
Okay.
something good. You're making money.
We got a lot of
flying
good
all
stuff.
around.
A lot of good stuff to go over
Good.
out here.
Nothing bad.
All good news tonight.
There you go.
There we go. And I'm not asking for anything either, so.
Not yet.
Okay. All right. So good evening, President Callahan, Council.
Yep.
Thank you for having us to provide our semi-annual update of the Easton Airport. So the overview, your airport business remains strong, very strong. We're self-sustaining enterprise now for 30 years. Businesses are growing and expanding. NextGen has just struck a new deal, moved into a third hangar. Trident is bringing the Navy PFP back right now. We have a lot of jets under management with those two companies. Down at Easton Jet, they also do omni-jet trading. They purchase jets and sell them. They can't, the business is flying. Jets are flying off the shelf. So business is good at the airport in that regard. Hangar space is at a premium. Our T-hangar wait list is at 49 people. It's never been that high. If you come in today and want a hangar, it's 3 to 5 years is what we're telling you. And people still sign up because there's no hangars in the state. St. Mary's Airport across the bridge is like 175 people on their waiting list. There's no hangars left. We do what we can to help people, but the corporate hangars are the same way. They're just stacked right to the gills.
Is there room to build more of them?
There is. And we've looked at that. We've talked about it in recent years. We're struggling with the same thing everybody's struggling with, construction costs, what was going to cost us $1.5 million last year is now $3 million or could be $5 million. We don't know. So we're taking a hard look at that. We had talked a couple years ago about maybe getting a USDA loan and building another set of T-hangars. The reality with building hangars is you need to wait a decade for any return on your investment. We've looked at two third-party businesses we've looked at partnering with. And nobody will touch it. Even if we give them a very fair ground lease and they build it all, it's going to take them forever to make any money. And so it really is something that the government's going to have to just build and kind of suck it up for 10 years. Now, the good news is at the state level that we are working on with MDOT-MAA. They know this is an issue, and we're starting to get the ball rolling on some legislation at the state level for the state to create a fund for airports across the state to build new T-hangars. That's in its infancy, but it's an idea that we're starting to roll out there. The state can help us, and have a fund set aside for us to just build hangars. So we're going to delve into that more over the coming year. Our runway improvement project, we remain on schedule. We've been completing a lot of enabling objectives, the surveying, the core samples, obstruction removal, land acquisition is nearly wrapped up, the easements. Really, a lot of these puzzle pieces are coming together. We still have a few more that are out there, but we are on schedule. And we'll also talk about community engagement this evening. Our tours are coming back, events are coming back post-COVID, the ACE program. Hundreds of people have been out to the airport in the last 6 months. These walk and talk tours are paying a lot of dividends. School field trips are back. Community groups are coming back to the airport. So we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. So capital improvement. Let's dig into some of the meat and the potatoes here. Last week I submitted and got approved for a pay request for just a hair under $800,000 there. That is reimbursement for a lot of these easements that we've been working on, the land acquisition stuff over the last couple years. So that the check is in the mail quite literally for that amount. This year in April we submitted a grant application to move to the design phase of our project. That's a $1.8 million ask from FAA. All indications are that we will receive that before September of this year, and that will enable us to actually design the overall runway program. And what I keep saying about that is it'll take a year, a little more than a year to design it. This is a huge program. This is a huge construction project. When it begins, this is going to be one of the biggest construction projects, certainly in the airport's history, and really it's going to be one of the larger ones in Talbot County. So it's going to take a while to design it. Even though I deal with this project all the time, there's times where I have meetings where I sit back and really get the depth of it. We went through an engineering study in January, and we had an electrical study. And just talking about what it's going to take to rebuild the electric grid of the airfield. Really what we're talking is a brand spanking new airfield for the primary runway. Everything out there is going to be brand new, state-of-the-art, new electric. We're working with Easton Utilities. We have all the plans. There's going to be new gas lines run out there. It's going to be a very impressive deal, once we get rolling on it. So designing it's going to be a process as well. So that's what we're asking the FAA to do this year. Obstruction removal phase 2, that work is complete, and we are wrapping up the punch list with our contractor literally this week, and we expect to have a reimbursement request to the Maryland Aviation Administration for nearly $300,000 by next week. So a lot of money coming back here at the end of the fiscal year for the airport. An item that we put into the budget this year, or for the next fiscal year, I'm sorry, our fiscal year, is an automated weather system, our AWAS. I'm working with the state on a funding solution. Again, this is challenging because of supply chain issues. It's going to take months longer to get the parts of this weather system manufactured and get to us. So really it's going to be like a procurement year and a construction year. It's going to be about a $500,000 project. We have a commitment from the state for 75%, and that was put in this year's my fiscal 23 budget. So that ball is rolling as well, conversations with the state. Any questions about any of those items? Okay. Talbot Business Center, everybody's favorite topic when the airport comes to town. So again, we're expecting the AIP grant for design the project by September of this year. All of the agreements, all the leases and the agreements in there, they expire on December 31st of this year, right? We put that in there as a safeguard, and everything moves month to month going into 2023. It's no secret to any tenant in there that the time is growing near the end of that building, and quite frankly, some of the maintenance issues that we've had to band together. We're starting to really get into that period where something breaks and we're fixing it, but some of the costs we're being very cautious with. So, and as we get into next year, it's really gonna be even worse. So we've used $50,000 for years as that make or break, where if it's $50,000 to fix, we just abandon that space and we don't touch that area. But we're probably going to have to start to scale that down a little more realistically as we get into next year. Also, too, once we get the design grant and we really know that things are absolutely committed with FAA, I do plan on sending a letter to all the tenants and really communicating this, everybody in there, that this is happening, and you're at the 18-month window right now for us to start impacting that site, and it's definitely becoming real. We expect the first construction package to be awarded literally next September, and so by the time we start to impact the site with construction activity, we're looking at January of 2024, being the realistic time frame of when we're on site starting to do the work. With that being said, we know there's the sheriff's office issue is always there.
Right.
And when we do our phasing, we are going to bide as much time as possible to, start impacting the site in the parking lots and working towards the sheriff's office. Obviously, we need to get there and study the utilities and the electric and things of that nature, but that is our plan. And as we go into design phase, that should all flesh itself out as well.
Micah, can I ask you one thing, please, with the viewers watching? If you don't mind going up to that screen and showing the viewers, or that pinpoint, from the end of that runway right now, how far it's going to be sort of land.
That is a great question,
Yeah.
President Callahan, and I actually have a note right here on my paper.
You do?
To point that out, because when I was looking at this today, making notes, I'm like, that really so good. That's a good picture to show.
Yeah.
So the runway, when we shift the runway, so a little bit of history, we have to shift the runway back away from Route 50 up here on the north end. That's the whole reason we're doing it, is for safety. So when we go through this shift and realignment, literally we are going to move this threshold here and this parallel taxiway. It'll end, or the new runway will end somewhere right around there. It'll be on existing airport, airfield property inside the fence line where our farmland is right now. The entirety of this site will be safety area. It will be 13 acres of green grass planted. It's actually another note that I have here. We're going to reduce the amount of impervious surface at the airport by more than 13 acres. So this will be 13 acres of grass. There will be some lights out there, and the ILS, there's currently an ILS shack here you can barely see. That'll be relocated down here, and some other ancillary equipment and things of that nature. But this entire site it'll be a grass field. It'll be that 1,000 foot of safety area that we've needed.
Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had somebody ask me the other day, instead of grass, could we put solar panels out there?
So we wouldn't want to put them there because they're on final, right? So there are some areas that we could put solar panels and direct them away from the flight path, but really, being directly on short final and under the flight path, we don't want any obstructions, and we don't want anything to interfere with the pilots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, plus, I also think the reflection and things like that
Right.
would just really make
FAA
the
has a
visibility.
whole advisory circular on if you're going to put panels out, they have to be, certain colors, certain direct, pointing away from the runways and things of that nature.
That makes sense.
Hugh Grund and I have talked about options for some panels, possibly over here by Power Plant 2, facing away from the airfield.
Well, thank you for exploring it.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. We look. The airport is a very environmentally friendly place. I like to always point that out. I also like to point out, excuse me, that we're going to recycle that whole complex as well. So we're working with Warren and their repurposing center. Everything that can be repurposed and recycled, literally, we're going to grind the building and the asphalt, everything up, and it's going to be used as the sub base of the new airfield. So it really is environmentally smart what we're doing here. Any other questions about the business center?
No, I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
think it helps everybody understand it.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
not necessarily longer, it shifts.
That's it. It's really, I always tell people, if you can imagine, you're just kind of sliding down,
Yeah,
to the
right.
southwest by 1,900 feet. One more issue I will hit on, because it makes so much sense to talk about it here, is Forest Conservation Act. Again, we have a couple pieces of the puzzle that need to be solved. We're going to have to have some discussions with the town of Easton about how we have not received from them an answer yet on how they are going to administer their Forest Conservation Act to this project. We know that we've had some challenges with forest conservation in the past. The problem with the challenge we're having here is, as I said, this project is going to reduce the amount of impervious soil by over 13 acres. But they don't really have a calculation that really credits us for that. So they're just kind of, dinging us on the amount that we're going to, add, but there's nowhere to credit us for the 13 acres of improvements. So we're working with we've brought the DNR involved and have some conversations to kind of, walk us through how to appropriately administer the Forest Conservation Act in the town for this project. So that's something that you're going to be hearing more about over the coming month or so as we because again, we need that check in the box before we put a shovel in the ground. And we're talking about putting a shovel in the ground in a little more than 18 months. So we need to figure the FCA piece out with the town.
I hate to ask you this one more question.
Yes, sir.
So when it shifts down,
Mm-hmm.
okay, even though that Black and Decker building's here and that's going to be gone, that isn't an opportunity on the other end to do any building.
It's not, no. Because same way, once we shift it away from Route 50 on the other end, we'll maintain 1,000 feet of safety area on that north end as well.
Gotcha.
So what you're going to have is a 6,400 foot runway, brand spanking new, with 1,000 feet of safety area on either end. It'll be safest and completely up to compliance. All right. Some other things we've been working on to improve the airport. We've installed about 16 new security cameras. There's very little of that airport property that's not under some level of surveillance right now, including all of our gates. We've updated our gate control access and monitoring, so new key cards have been given out. We had an old system that was failing often. We have a whole new modern system where we can monitor everything from the airport office now, which actually we couldn't before. We had one system was over in the maintenance shop, and another system was over here. Everything's in the airport office now, so you can literally stand in the airport office and look at an array of security cameras, much like you can out here. You can see everything that's going on in the airport, and you can also go back to the gate control and see who just came through what gate or anything like that. We also now have the ability to lock down the airport at the push of a button in the event of a security incident or something like that. We didn't have that opportunity before. So if we had a security issue, a law enforcement response or something like that, you always have to plan for these things now. We can hit a button and lock all the gates and keep the airfield secure. The terminal building, completely fresh paint in the lobby, new signage. We have made that leap to digital advertising that I've been talking about for the last couple of budget years. If you stop in, we have digital displays running. We have completely revamped our tourism section. Everything is Talbot focused. We're working with Cassandra to really, get that space looking good and, get that tourism element working. We've kind of developed a flex space now for, if we have a tenant that needs a desk for like, a month or two, they just need a presence for something, aviation related. We've kind of created a space in the terminal where we can, put a quick agreement together to have them space that they need to accommodate them, meeting room and whatnot. And we are just now getting quotes to replace the terminal. The curbing up there is original from 1987. It's not up to today's ADA standards, and it's crumbling. So we're going to get the curbing replaced in the coming month or two, and then make those small improvements that really go a long way. I'll also add we've been working hard in the last couple of years to improve the ADA compliance, and we've actually gotten some great feedback from community members who are in wheelchairs and things of that nature, and they appreciate the bathrooms and widening of some parking places and things of that nature. So again, it's not always the big things you do that make a difference. Sometimes it's the little things that go a long way. And community outreach, probably the most enjoyable thing we do. The events are back, the activities are back, we're having a great time with them. We had a very successful Easton Airport cruise in a couple weeks ago. The weather kept a lot of folks away, but we did have 80 cars come out there and they participated. The coolest thing we did that day was our ACE program. We paid for kids to take a free airplane ride. So we had about 30 kids and their parents that went up for just a lap around the pattern in a single engine PA-28, and our ACE program paid for the flight instructors and the fuel. Trident personnel offered their time. So it was a great deal for both of us, and we got 30 kids up in the air to experience. And you should have seen them, the beaming. They were just beaming. Good pictures, and that's what it's all about, is connecting with the community and having kids understand that they can do that stuff. Runway Safety Action Team met last week. Our walk and talk open house tours have been well attended. We have one scheduled for Thursday with like 30-some people that want to come out. And these walk and talks are really, they're really focused. We're getting a lot of folks come out and they get to ask me the hard questions. And I always get the same array. They want to know about the runway and the old black, and they want to know the same things. They want to know, are more planes going to come over their house and this? And I do believe that after everybody comes to the airport and they actually hear the real answer, everybody leaves there with a different opinion, and then we point out the other stuff, the environmentally friendly things and all the extra stuff we do, and I think we're making disciples out of people when they come out there. We hosted the Business After School program recently as well, so the tours are coming back and we're really happy about that. Other headlines for the community to know, we've pushed out a lot of obstruction removal updates in the newspaper, social media, the website. So we are trying harder than ever to be very proactive with information at the airport. And we think that's paying dividends because people seem to be more in tune with what's going on. A lot of staff interviews. I was on the cover of that Shore Monthly magazine. I learned to take 500 pictures to find 5 good ones. So that was a learning experience for me. We have a sign up at the ball field there at North Park. We're really trying to kind of make inroads and with the community and support them as much as possible. And we are proactively revamping our noise abatement and good neighbor policy. We're putting re-educating the pilots, re-educating the air traffic controllers about flight patterns and which preferred flight patterns and things of that nature. So I just really want everybody in the community to know that when they call and they tell me they're irritated about a plane flying over, I completely understand. And a lot of times I explain to them that I live on short final for one of the runways as well. So usually if the plane flies over your house, it just flew over mine as well. So I completely understand your frustration, and we are working as hard as we can to keep it as quiet as we can as well. All right, air traffic statistics. I like getting into the numbers. I gave you 3 years of comparison there, so you can kind of see what 2019 looked like pre-COVID. And then 2020, we dipped down, but then we are right back. Numbers-wise, air traffic count-wise, we're right back where we were pre-pandemic, with some things being a little higher. So, and I always like to break down these little nuggets, to look at the traffic a little differently. Flight training is nearly 60% of our overall activity. Out of that flight training, the military accounted for 25% of the VFR pattern activity, which is no surprise when you see the H-60s flying around low and slow. 15% of the overall activity was the military flight training, and that's significant, for a general aviation civilian airport, that much military activity. And I find it can be irritating, I know, with the helicopters, but overall that's a good thing. Your itinerant GA and military accounted for basically 41%. So when we say itinerant, those are folks that are just coming in and landing, they're not doing the pattern work. And that's the highest ever recorded out of any year. So to have nearly 30,000 airplanes just come straight in and land in a year, that's the highest that we've ever recorded. The business users, the one that we can categorize as, the charter flights, the ones that are absolutely, we can count them because they have a unique call sign, and the way it's in the system starts with a 3-letter ID. So we absolutely know how many of these business flights come in. Again, 3,381, highest ever recorded. We know that these are absolute charter flights. And I'd mentioned this before, but it's always worth repeating. 10 years ago, we were averaging about 3 of these, business flights a day, and now we're averaging just over 9, so 3 times the amount of business traffic. I can tell you, I had 2 conversations just this week with the guys that are actually putting the fuel in the airplanes, and I mean, we're having more jet traffic come in now to take on fuel than we ever have, and although fuel prices are up, they are. Part of our business model is still being a good value regionally, so, our Jet A cost was nearly $6 a gallon today, but that's $3 cheaper than across the bridge. So you're still going to come over here and get a little, jet fuel if you're able to. Same thing with avgas. Our avgas is pushing $7 a gallon. We do expect that to flatten out. I mean, your avgas users are going to be your single engine guys. It's going to be your Cessnas. But then again, you're going to have the Trident PFP program is going to boost that. So we're still going to end up selling about 90,000 gallons of avgas this year, which is right on target.
So before you move off of fuel prices, I assume you're maintaining your margin so that you keep your profit the same even though the fuel price has gone up, passing that on to the consumer.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're at 36 cents a gallon is what we retain. 20 cents of that is for flowage, and then the other remaining amount is for the facility fee to maintain the fuel farm. But yeah, we collect 36 cents of every gallon.
So, but are you seeing a drop in the amount of flights now? Because, I mean, obviously we're all paying it at the pump.
They're not. I was having a conversation today with Easton Jet. The jet users don't care. They're going to keep pumping. They're going to keep coming. They $7, $8, $9 a gallon, it's not phasing them. So how long will that continue? We don't know. Even if it does pull back right now this year, well, this was end of April, we pumped 879,000 gallons. A normal year for us is 600,000 or 700,000 gallons. So even if it does pull back a little bit, we're still way up. We only need 120,000 gallons to exceed 1 million, and we've never done that. So I fully expect that we're going to do that this year. Will we sustain at 1 million gallons? We don't know. The first thing I said was that business is growing and businesses are expanding, and we have at least 3 businesses there that do some level of jet management, and one of them has pushing 20 or 30 jets under contract. So sometimes, although the planes are not housed here, they might be sent to Martin to be hangared at night or other places. They're bringing them in and filling them up and then putting them away over at Martin because they can save $3 a gallon. So, a lot of that stuff is happening too. So we're seeing a lot of interesting things. But the moral of the story.
Just real quick, what would a normal price per gallon be if it weren't like today? What would it have been a year ago?
6 months ago, we had Jet A for less than $3 a gallon.
So it's more than doubled.
Oh, more than double.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we were literally pumping Jet A 6 months ago for $2.90. Yeah. So it's doubled. But yet traffic has kept, and we're still selling the same amount of fuel. Again, is that going to sustain forever? Probably not, but we'll take every gallon we can get for right now. And with that, that concludes my part of the presentation. I'll turn it over to Mr. Pettit for any comments.
Well, just one brief one about the ACE program, which is an educational program for students in Talbot County. There are going to be some tremendous opportunities in aviation over the next 10 or 15 years. So this program has a lot of potential for the kids, you know, who are participating. For example, there are, I think it's about 5% of the commercial airline pilots are women. This is a great growth opportunity for women in aviation. And there's a shortage of pilots. Some people disagree with that, but the fact of the matter is that pilots are retiring at an ever-increasing rate right now. So there's going to be that opportunity. And of course, with more planes flying, there's more opportunity in the controller area where Micah got his wings. And so I'm very upbeat about, you know, what Mike has been doing to encourage this program, the ACE program, and I think it's going to pay dividends for the kids in Talbot County.
Yeah, and we've also had, and this is a good point, we've actually had one female adult who, within the last 4 years, went from not being a pilot to becoming a pilot, becoming an instructor, and is now flying for the airlines out of Chicago. And she did all that right here at Easton Airport. And so it's very possible.
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
Very possible. She went from not being a pilot to flying for the airlines. It's possible at Easton Airport if you want to do it.
Maybe there's a career for me after getting off the council.
A third career.
All right. Well, good job, guys. Ms. Price?
Well, I am excited that I'm going to be able to bring you 15 board members from around the state when we have our board retreat in 2 weeks.
Yes, we are looking forward to it. I got all kinds of ideas for you.
I can't wait for you to show everybody around, and what we do here is very, very unique, very successful. But I have to apologize for not making the meetings because they're on Wednesday mornings when I'm in Annapolis, so I haven't been able to attend, you know, as your airport rep for a while. But hopefully between now and the end of my term, I'll be able to get back to those meetings. But thank you for everything that you're doing, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Mr. DeVillio?
I asked my question and got an answer.
Nothing further.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Good job. Okay. Up next, Jess.
Hi there.
The
you
assistant
there.
county manager.
Yeah. We're going to call her the county manager tonight, you know?
Yes.
Always the assistant. We have no board and committee appointments this evening, but I would like to call Ray Clark up for our next item, which is the request to award bid 2207, request for proposals, engineering services, comprehensive water and sewerage plan update. This would be for the 2022-2023 report of the review. As you read in your agenda packet, the Department of Public Works did put out a bid. We received 2 bids in response to bid 2207, and the recommendation is to award that bid to Rao Inc. in the amount of $129,530, and I'll turn it over to Ray.
Yes, Council, and again, as Jessica Morris noted, we did receive only 2 bids. We did sell 4 bid packages, so it wasn't heavily, I guess, solicited or by other bidders. So, but at the same time, we did talk with Rao Incorporated, which is the low bidder, and confirm with them that they can do the job for the price.
Okay.
It always amazes me that sometimes there's such a differential in the bids that we receive back. What do you hold that accountable for?
I think right now, part of it was having meetings with the municipalities, as well as, let's say, coming down and doing presentations with the Planning Commission, as well as the Public Works Advisory Board. We had several meetings on that. We did not allow for, let's say, virtual meetings. It had to be in-person meetings. So I think because Wallace Montgomery is out of, let's say, Towson, their travel time and whatnot, probably that was part of it, I believe. But I also think, too, I think Rao is probably a little more familiar with Talbot County than Wallace Montgomery is, especially in dealing with the municipalities and the water and wastewater
Yeah, but we're still talking about 3 times as much just for travel.
Oh, I know. That's why I checked with Rao if they would be able to do the job.
Okay.
You know, and based upon the scope, they indicated they could.
Well, I'm comfortable making a motion that we award the bid to Rao Incorporated after the work that you did, the confirmation, and it's really close to what you had initially estimated it to be. So,
Second?
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to award the bid to Rao. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
The next is request to award bid 2201, request for proposals, real property for Talbot County Public Safety Complex. As you read in your agenda packet, Clay Stamp, the county manager, is requesting council approval to award bid 2201 to Nova Sixa for $6 million for a property located in Easton. This bid was put out and we received 9 bids in response. This proposal that we're requesting the award of includes 2 parcels with a 24,000 square foot office building that will eventually house the public safety complex to include the sheriff's office, and there are sufficient funds in the county's capital improvement program for this project.
Okay.
Make a motion to accept that bid, amount of $6 million.
I'll second it.
And I want to thank the staff team and the sheriff in particular for his input in selecting the suitable location. We heard tonight how we are working under a deadline from the airport property, that we will have to inevitably move the sheriff sooner or later, and this is an important step in that process. So thanks to all who have gotten us to this point.
Yeah, I would like to say the same thing. I think this is a big step for the citizens of Talbot County in public safety. Council worked really hard, staff worked really hard to find a location for them, and I'm very proud of the selection that we've done, and I think people are going to be very, very happy of our selection. So with that being said, we've got a motion and a second to go ahead and purchase a new safety complex for the Sheriff's Department. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Great. Next, I'd like to call Ken Davis forward for the acting finance director to discuss the approval of the 4th quarter budget transfers for this fiscal year 2022.
Good evening, Ken.
Yeah, good evening, council. Thanks for hanging in there for the last agenda item of a long evening.
Thank you for hanging in there.
Sure. A big audience for the 4th quarter budget transfers. So anyways, you received our proposed budget transfers for the 4th quarter in your packets. And our proposed transfers are based on projected spending through June 30th. And payroll projections are considered remaining payroll cycles for the remainder of the year. Capital outlay projections are forecasted based on anticipated purchases of equipment for the remainder of the year. And operating expense projections, for the most part, are based on year-to-date expenditures and assuming somewhat of a consistent spending pattern through the rest of June, with some exceptions, of course. So summarizing the net changes for the major expense categories, we're moving salaries and benefits down by approximately $825,000. So even though we had a COLA adjustment that was effective January 1, in a difficult labor market, we did have several funded positions that we weren't able to fill. So the net effect of that is adjusting the budget down approximately $825,000. We're moving operating expense up approximately $1.1 million. And that is related to, and also capital outlay up $240,000, mostly due to price increases in an inflationary environment. And we're anticipating an increase in payments to municipalities for public accommodations tax, and we're raising that budget by $550,000 for increased tourism volume. So in total, the total $1 million approximately net increase in these changes is absorbed by the contingency reserve, and leaving a remaining budget in that account of approximately $437,000. So I'd like to emphasize that these are estimates, and they continue to evolve. We continue to receive some one-off requests that come in, that are continuing to come in, but nothing too terribly large. We continue to evaluate those on a case-by-case basis. But for the most part, we expect these transfers to be pretty well set, but we could have a little bit of movement here and there for some miscellaneous items, and anything of that nature will bring to your attention through the county manager's office. So detailed department level allocations are in your packet and are subject to your approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, first I want to thank you for not having to read through that whole list, because in some years we do read through every single one of those, and I assume that they're available if anybody wants to see them. Yes. They're public, but they would take about 20 minutes to read through them all. And you mentioned the public accommodations tax, and while to get to these transfers to be net zero, that increase in $550,000 is not really an increase in expenses. We had, $700,000 or $800,000 or $900,000 increase in the accommodations tax, and this is just what we pay out to the municipalities. So what was that increase in the revenue?
I don't have that note handy, but yes, it does exceed the amount that as compared to the outgoing.
Right, and honestly, that particular transfer would make more sense to see a revenue with expense under it, because it looks like you're taking, a lot more out of the contingency reserve, but we're actually adding to the revenue budget, which is not shown, in this document.
Right.
But I thank you for all of that work and departments working together to keep that at a net zero for the most part.
Sure. Thank you.
So thank you, Ken.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. DeVillio, good?
I'm good.
Good. Mr. Lesher?
Oh, no questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you, really appreciate it.
So I guess
Good
you need a
job.
motion then to accept the
Yep.
transfers?
Yep.
And I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion in second, Madam Secretary. Could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Great. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Council, next I'd like to request that you declare Tuesday, June 7th as a special legislative day for the purpose of introducing capital enabling legislation, and request that we start that meeting at 3 o'clock.
I'll move for this special legislative day as requested.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion second, move the date for special legislation. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Great, and then just two announcements. The county offices will be closed on Monday for Memorial Day holiday, and can you believe that? And then secondly is just truly to thank the council for adopting the LEOPS administrative resolution tonight. That is a monumental step. We have 37 paramedics that will be eligible for that program, and we have the required 60% who have signed on to that program. So
Great.
that is
That's
truly
great.
a
We're good for
monumental event, and we appreciate your support. And that's all I have this evening.
Okay, well, good job.
Thank you.
Good job. We miss
miss Mr. Stamp.
We miss Mr. Stamp.
Yes.
Okay, he'll be back soon. All right, so, okay, public comment. No, man, okay, all right. Ms. Price, council comments.
I think I've asked enough questions for the evening that I have no comments for
Okay.
tonight.
Good. Mr. DeVillio.
I would just like to say very briefly, I attended the services today for Millard Pack Sr., Corey's father. It was extremely well attended. The room was packed. Nobody else will use that. But he was an amazing guy. 9 children. He had 8 boys, 1 daughter. He is in the Maryland Boxing Hall of Fame.
Nice.
Worked for, he had a record, 38-2.
Woo.
Yes. Yes. Just an amazing guy who's very gifted with his art as well. He did a charcoal portrait of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which was displayed in the Turner Station branch of the Baltimore County Public Library for years. I wish my condolences to Corey and his family. But if you get a chance to read the obituary, he was an amazing father to more than just, I believe it was like 36 grandchildren, 30 great-grandchildren. Just an amazing family. It was nice to see them all together.
That's good.
Mr. Lesher?
I have nothing further.
I think I just want to end it by the holiday coming up and just wishing, I'm proud of all the veterans for protecting us, and I wish them safety throughout the world in protecting us, and hope they're all safe. That's it. And you want to take us home here?
The County Council's next meeting will be held on Tuesday, June 7th, beginning at 3:00 p.m. Following the council meeting, the council will be holding a meeting with elected officials from the towns of Easton, Oxford, Queen Anne, St. Michael's, and Trapp at 5:00 p.m. in the Y Oak Room located in the Talbot County Community Center. Therefore, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting and reconvene as noted?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and second to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.